This was a match that would be the envy of anyone, regardless of age. The girl, now sitting in the carriage, was anxious, clutching the hem of her skirt tightly, then pursed her lips in thought for a moment before softly asking a question. Is it really me? The future bride the Despencer family has always wanted. I can't possibly be the one. The woman sitting across from her immediately confirmed. The one chosen is indeed you, Miss Rena. Just as she finished speaking, the carriage coincidentally came to a stop, and seeing this, the woman announced, "We've arrived, let's get out." With that, she quickly stepped out of the carriage first, and as the coachman opened the door for her, he bowed respectfully and announced, "Viscountess Evelyn and Miss Rena have arrived." Lifting her head to gaze at the magnificent and splendid castle, the girl couldn't help but marvel in her thoughts. "Wow, it's so grand," the gentlewoman suggested. "Let's go inside, Miss Rena." As soon as she entered, a man in a white vest greeted her with a warm and friendly smile. "Welcome to the Despencer family, my lady. This is the eldest son of our house, Felix." Rena didn't answer, instead staring wide-eyed at him and thinking to herself, "This man is my husband?" Flashing back to a few days prior at the Holmes estate, just as Rena opened the door and stepped inside with a bag of bread in her hand. "I'm home," she said, only to walk in on her older sister's vehement protest. "No way! Are you insane, father? I will not marry some Viscount." The girl who refused was Lucy Holmes, the eldest daughter of the Holmes family. The head of the family, Winter Holmes, rubbed his forehead as he handed her a document and said, all right. A girl like you could marry into a better family, but just look at this." Without a word, she snatched the document and hurriedly read its contents. Seeing her eyebrows furrow tighter and tighter as she read the document, made Rena wonder to herself, what's going on? Just then, someone suddenly walked in and bumped into her, making her yelp in surprise. "Ah!" The collision was a bit forceful, causing an item from the bag she was holding to fall out. Seeing this, Rena quickly bent down to reach for it, thinking, "Huh?" The woman suddenly snapped irritably, "What's all this noise?" Rena froze for a moment at her words, then looked up and asked, "Ah, you're back?" Her mother, Viscountess Catherine Holmes, glanced down at her and asked reproachfully, "Why are you just standing in the way?" At that moment, Rena's sister suddenly asked with a sneer, "What is this? Doesn't this mean any daughter from the Holmes family will do?" Hearing this, her mother crossed her arms and asked impatiently, "What is it?" Her sister suddenly glanced over at Rena and made a unilateral decision. "Fine, then just send Rena." Hearing her sister declare that she would go in her place, stunned Rena completely. She dropped the bag she was holding and thought in a panic, "Huh," while her eyes suddenly gleamed evil and a sinister smile. To Rena, Mr. Winter cheerfully asked, "Rena, you'll go, won't you?" She fearfully stammered, Go where, sir?" He casually replied, "This is a marriage proposal from the house of Viscount Despencer. They say they'll offer a lot of money." Hearing this, Rena broke out in a cold sweat, thinking to herself, "A marriage proposal? Times have changed, and more noble families are going bankrupt. The royal palace couldn't cover its tax revenue, so it began selling titles, and if there are sellers, there will naturally be buyers. The Viscount Despencer family was one of them, but buying a title isn't recognized by the so-called true nobility. Those who were born into nobility, and the families who buy their titles with money, are causing the value of the aristocracy to decline. It's only natural that the two sides despise each other, so as a result, to become true nobles, they're coming after a count's daughter." With that thought, Rena immediately shouted out her opinion. I don't want to." She then squeezed her eyes shut, filled with resentment, thinking, "I've tried so hard just to be useful. Our family was so poor I couldn't even eat properly, but I still worked so hard, and in the end, I'm just being sold off like this." With her hands on her hips, Mrs. Catherine loudly objected, "Absolutely not, you can't send her away." Hearing that, Rena was moved, thinking, "Mother, at least you don't want me to go." But contrary to her hopes, her mother frowned with regret and explained, "If she leaves, who will do the housework?" Hearing this left Rena completely stunned, so much that she froze for a few seconds before lowering her head, hopefully thinking, No, I shouldn't be disappointed. "That's right, who would do the chores if I'm not here? Mother, please, get even more upset. I really don't want to be sent away." Handing the letter to Mrs. Catherine, Mr. Winter suggested, "Catherine, read this letter carefully." As she read the contents, she scowled and thought to herself, "You blew all our assets on your business ventures, and now you're planning to sell our daughter to some viscount just to survive?" She declared decisively, "I don't care how much money it is, you can't even dream of taking my daughter." But then she saw the amount written on the letter. Her eyes immediately lit up as she gasped in astonishment. Oh my goodness. "How much is this?" he replied gleefully. "A whole 5,000 florins? That's 5,000. Hearing that, she immediately became overjoyed, thinking to herself, "With this much money, I can live in luxury in a grand mansion again, just like before." Then, she said with a smirk, "Rena, my sweet daughter, All our problems will be solved if you just leave this house. Rena, if you alone make this sacrifice, our entire family can be comfortable. Why must you be so selfish?" Seeing Rena just stand there with that gloomy expression instead of answering, her mother felt disgusted and complained. She thought, "How unsightly. How could I have given birth to such a second-rate child?" Then she raised her voice. "I've raised you all these years. The least you can do is repay me this much. Marrying into a good family is how you show your filial piety. You're finally being useful." Upon hearing that, Rena immediately wanted to retort, but she quickly swallowed the words before they could escape, pressing her lips together in sorrow. She thought, "Those are the words I've always wanted to hear, but I don't feel happy at all. Yes." Catherine didn't even care what Rena wanted and hastily turned her head to make a demand. "All right, Rena will be leaving soon, so go prepare a meal," she mumbled in reply. "Yes." Her mother then suddenly asked, "Where did Maurice go?" Rena's sister replied, "He'll be back by dinner time, so I can buy that dress, right, Mom?" She calmly replied, "Of course, it has to match your shoes and jewelry." Seeing them so casually talk about shopping, jewelry and clothes, with the very money they would get from selling her, even though she was right there, she couldn't help but feel heartbroken and quickly opened the door to leave the room, lowering her head in sorrow as she thought, "So that's how it is. I'm not part of this family anymore." Time flew by in the blink of an eye, and soon, 1 week had passed. The Holmes family saw their source of fortune arrive. Catherine smiled faintly and invited them in. "Please come in, members of the Despencer family." Then, she paused for a moment and gulped, to compose herself. Then thought with determination, "I can't let these pretentious nobles intimidate me." Then, with a welcoming smile, she said, "You must be tired from your long journey." As Rena glanced around, she thought to herself, "I don't see Maurice anywhere." Just then, the lady of the Despencer house suddenly stood up and bowed politely. "Thank you for accepting this marriage proposal." Seeing this, Rena thought to herself again, "This must be Lady Evelyn of the Despencer house. I should greet her too." With that thought, Rena quickly began to introduce herself. "Ah, I am." But before she could finish her sentence, Catherine hurriedly cut in. "Viscountess Evelyn, could you speak with me privately for a moment?" With that, she quickly pulled Lady Evelyn aside to talk. Left alone, Rena dejectedly lowered her head and thought, "So I'm just being sold off without even a wedding ceremony. I wonder, out of all the people here, who is my husband? I wish they were here for Lucy." After all, Lucy could just throw a tantrum and refuse, and the engagement would be called off. Just as Rena had that thought, someone suddenly called out, "Rena!" Then Catherine approached her and unexpectedly pulled her into a hug, whispering softly, "My talk with the Viscountess went very well. My good daughter, you must live well." After hearing her mother say this, she couldn't help but feel moved and began to call out, but the precious word Mom had barely left her lips. That's when her mother immediately dropped the gentle maternal act she had just put on, replaced by her usual harsh expression as she snapped, "Now, get going." Then, she nonchalantly turned and walked away, and while Rena was still in a daze, 5 servants from the Despencer household suddenly took the luggage from her hands, offering, "Allow me to carry your luggage for you, Lady Rena." Hearing this, she quickly snatched her luggage back and said, "No, it's all right, it's not heavy, I'll go on ahead." Then, as she rushed off, she thought, chiding herself, "What were you even expecting, you fool?" Just then, a voice suddenly called out, "Hello there, Rena." Hearing that, she quickly stopped in her tracks and answered with a gasp, "Oh yes." Mrs. Evelyn smiled kindly and suggested, "Just pick whichever one you feel most comfortable with," she asked blankly. "Comfortable?" The lady then explained, "Yes, between the car and the carriage." After a moment of thought, Rena pointed hesitantly and chose, I'll take this one." Mrs. Evelyn said nothing but let a small smile grace her lips. Then she took a step forward and said, "Very well, I also prefer something more classic. Let's go." Rena nodded slightly and replied, "Ah yes, ma'am." Just as she was about to get into the carriage, the eldest son, Maurice Holmes, appeared out of nowhere, eagerly striding over and exclaiming with a bright smile, "Wow, that's beautiful. Can we buy one just like it?" Seeing him finally show his face, Rena silently called out his name, Maurice. Then she mumbled with a hint of sadness, "So he didn't come to say goodbye to me." While Rena was still muttering to herself in sorrow, Felix, who was behind her, found his eyes glued to the back of her figure for some reason. It took a moment before he finally shifted his gaze elsewhere. Stealing a glance at Felix, the eldest daughter of the Holmes family thought in surprise, "What's this? Are all the men in that family handsome?" Then she suddenly scoffed and muttered, "It's none of my business anyway," and she quickly turned to go back inside. The moment she stepped through the door, what greeted her eyes was the sight of Mrs. Catherine, hugging a suitcase full of money and grinning from ear to ear as she suggested, "Look, it's even more money than they said in the letter." Mr. Winter, overjoyed, praised her, "You're absolutely amazing, my dear." While everyone in the Holmes household was celebrating the large sum of money in their hands, Rena sat silently in the carriage with her head bowed in sadness. Before long, the entire Despencer family began their journey back home. The youngest son of the Despencer family suddenly grumbled, "Ugh, it's so cramped." Hearing this, the second son immediately chided him. "That's why I told you not to come. Why did you follow us?" He snapped back irritably. "What are you talking about? If everyone else is going, then of course the youngest in the family has to go too. Besides, you're the one who should have ridden in the carriage." The second son explained nonchalantly, "I'm taking his place since he got kicked out. He's as tall as a beanpole, and his face is so expressionless, they were afraid he'd scare Miss Rena." Ha! As soon as he said that, Felix quickly turned his head away to avoid their gazes. Seeing this, he and the youngest son both took their hands to cover their mouths and snicker. Meanwhile, Felix thought to himself with some agreement, "Is that really true? I guess so. She did keep shrinking away earlier." As he thought about this, Felix suddenly recalled Rena's shy expression when she looked at him earlier, and a small, amused smile crept onto his lips as he thought, that look was quite adorable. But a short while later, the vehicle came to a stop, revealing a massive building. As she took in the magnificent splendor of the mansion, she couldn't help but marvel silently. "Wow, it's huge." "Yes." Then she gulped involuntarily and began to worry. "How long would it take me to clean this whole place? Since they're a wealthy family, I probably won't have to do it all by myself, right?" Just then, Mrs. Evelyn suddenly called out, "Rena, everyone is waiting in the drawing room. We should head inside too." Hearing her, Rena replied, "Ah, yes, ma'am," and then hurriedly followed after her. Stepping into the mansion, the moment she set foot in the living room, Rena couldn't help but be awestruck and marvel silently. "Everything in here looks so expensive. If I accidentally break something, even by mistake, I shouldn't even think about it." At that thought, Rena hurriedly tapped her head repeatedly with her hand, which made Evelyn and her husband, the head of the Despencer family, quite curious. Then, he suddenly smiled gently and suggested, "Come in, Miss Rena. I am Alex, the head of the Despencer family." As soon as she saw his dashingly handsome face, Rena couldn't hold back a silent compliment. So handsome. Turning his gaze toward Felix, Mr. Alex smiled gently and introduced him. "And this here is Miss Rena's fiancé, the eldest son of our family, Felix." The moment she saw his incredibly striking face, Rena immediately blushed, staring at him in a daze. After a moment, she snapped back to her senses and thought, "He's wickedly handsome. It's terrifying." Glancing over, he saw Felix still had on that same icy cold expression he wore every day, even when faced with a young lady as fresh and beautiful as a flower, which made Mr. Alex chuckle. He placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Why don't you continue the introductions?" Hearing this, Felix immediately did as he was told. "This is the second son, Eden, and over there is the youngest, Jeffrey. And as for me," Mrs. Evelyn chimed in, her eyes smiling, "I'm Evelyn. That's enough with the introductions. Shall we all have a seat now?" Rena answered in a small voice, "Yes, of course." After she spoke, all 6 of them quickly moved to their chairs and sat down. Noticing that almost everyone's eyes were glued on her, Rena couldn't help but feel terrified and think to herself, "Everyone is staring at me." Seeing this, Mrs. Evelyn let out 2 fake coughs and then shot them a glare, commanding with a frown, "Stop staring." Then, she smiled pleasantly and said, "Rena must be tired, so let's save the family matters for another time. We will discuss the important matter of the marriage first." Breaking into a sweat, she asked nervously, "Yes?" The lady calmly explained, "The wedding will be held 2 years from now, and in the meantime, you can just think of yourself as being engaged." Holding her teacup, Rena couldn't help but think in surprise, "That long? Then I didn't need to come here so soon." Mrs. Evelyn continued gently, "We intend to hold an engagement ceremony, just a simple one with the family. It may seem like a long time to you, but it's just the right amount." Hearing this, Rena frowned slightly in speculation, thinking to herself, "Don't tell me this is a test? That's it, it's a test. If I can't do what's required, I'll be kicked out immediately. I absolutely can't let that happen. I just have to try my best." The lady didn't notice her somewhat strange behavior and cheerfully wondered aloud with a smile, "So, how should we address each other from now on?" Rena suddenly stood up, picked up her luggage, and politely said, "Then, may I please go to my room first?" Hearing her request, Mrs. Evelyn didn't press the matter and replied with a warm smile, "Of course, go and get some rest." After confirming that Rena had left the living room and gone up to her room, Felix's brows immediately knitted together as he shot up from his seat in protest. "That's far too long. 6 months? No, it should be 1 year at the very least," Mrs. Evelyn retorted nonchalantly. "I don't want to." This made him so displeased and frustrated that he raised his voice at his mother. She quickly began to explain, "Rena might not like you either, you know." At that, a bewildered Felix asked, "What do you mean?" She leisurely crossed her arms, smirked, and continued, "So you think you're guaranteed to like Rena? I only agreed to this marriage because the plan was a reasonable way to get Rena away, but I refuse to hold a wedding when Rena is still unwilling." Her coming here was not Rena's choice. It was because we paid to buy her. The moment Felix heard Evelyn bring that up, he suddenly flopped down into his chair, clasped his hands in front of him, and muttered reproachfully, "You didn't have to be so blunt about it, Mom. This is just between me and Rena." Hearing Felix say that, Evelyn felt a bit triumphant and speculated to herself, "Felix, you're pretty anxious about this too, aren't you?" Then, she gently closed her eyes and recalled the first time she saw Rena, when she was playing with the children at the orphanage she had founded. The moment she saw the radiant smile on the girl's face, it made her immediately declare, "I want to adopt that child." Hearing this, the manager broke into a nervous sweat and explained hesitantly, "Ah, yes, that child is Lady Rena of the Holmes family. I'm so grateful that she visits our orphanage so often." Her words made Evelyn feel a little embarrassed, and she quickly apologized. "Oh my, look at me, how rude! But that child truly has a beautiful smile." Finishing her memory, Evelyn picked up her teacup and thought with hope, "I pray that child can be happy here." Seeing Eden brazenly puff out his cheeks to tease him, Joseph furiously shouted, "Despicable!" Meanwhile, Mr. Alex whined pleadingly, "I want to talk to Rena too." As she raised the teacup to her lips, Evelyn thought with a hint of worry, "But with this plan, if that child isn't happy?" Her thoughts paused for a moment before she continued to herself, "Then I must proceed with my own plan." At the same time, Felix was worrying incessantly, "What if that girl doesn't remember me at all?" She, in turn, resolved in her mind, "You must try to capture Rena's heart." Felix, Mr. Alex, holding a piece of paper, lowered his head and thought pitifully, "Only my wife gets to talk to Rena. I want to get close to Rena too." It turned out the paper in his hand held the words he wanted to express to her. "Dear Rena, would you prefer to call me Father, Dad, or Papa? I personally like the last one. Just whatever you do, absolutely do not call me by my title." The next morning, in Rena's room, after a deep sleep, she suddenly jolted awake, bolting upright and thinking in a panic, "Oh my gosh, what time is it? Why didn't the alarm go off? Mom is going to be furious." As she thought this, Rena suddenly froze, and only then did she realize she wasn't at her own home anymore, but at the Despencer residence. Then she mumbled to herself, "This isn't my house, geez." With that, she turned her gaze to the scenery outside, the window, then thought with some surprise, "After I turned 12, I think this is the first time I've ever slept in this late." At that thought, an idea suddenly struck Rena. She turned to leave, her mind made up. "I have to get to the kitchen right away." A moment later, opening the kitchen door, Rena said politely, "Excuse me." The head chef was surprised to see her up so early and asked, "Oh my goodness, young lady, what are you doing here?" The green-haired maid saw this and asked curiously, "Who is she?" The brown-haired maid chimed in, wondering the same thing. "Who is that?" The head chef quickly reminded them, "She's the new young lady the master told you all about." Hearing this, the brown-haired maid couldn't help but exclaim in shock, "Oh my gosh, so that's her?" She quickly introduced herself. "I'm Mary, the head chef. Is there something you need in the kitchen this early, young lady?" Clasping her hands together, Rena asked timidly, Is there anything for me to do?" Her question left everyone staring at her in stunned, awkward silence, worried they were about to look down on her for being useless. So Rena quickly spoke up to prove herself, "I know how to make bread, and I can make stew too." The head chef broke into a nervous sweat and asked, bewildered, "I'm sorry, what?" Rena quickly added, "Oh, and I'm also good at cleaning." Hearing this, the chef was completely flabbergasted and exclaimed, "Oh, for heaven's sake, no matter what, a young lady has no work to do in a place like this." Hearing that, Rena bit her lip in fear. She thought, "At this rate, they're gonna kick me out. I absolutely can't let that happen." Suddenly, she spotted an apron hanging nearby. Rena immediately grabbed it and, with a shy blush, rushed off while making her offer. "I'll find something to do myself." Seeing this, the head chef called out in a panic, "Young lady, wait!" Meanwhile, the brown-haired and green-haired maids could only stand there watching her with helpless smiles as they commented, "The young lady is just so adorable." By now, Rena had quickly tied her hair up high and put on the apron. Then she started cracking an egg on the side of a bowl, dropping the contents inside. A short while later, in the dining room of the Despencer estate, all the dishes had been prepared and served. Seeing Rena just standing there instead of taking a seat, Mr. Alex immediately asked, "Rena, why are you just standing there?" Breaking into a sweat, she asked back blankly, "Huh?" As he pulled out a chair for her, Philip gently offered, "Sit here." She heard him say that. She couldn't help but blush and reply, "Oh, yes." Then, as she sat down, she thought with a bit of doubt, "We're eating together?" Philip suddenly asked, "Milk or tea? Which would you like?" She stammered in response, "Milk, milk, please." Hearing that, he gave a small smile and replied, "All right." Flustered, she added her thanks, "Thank you." While munching on his food, Mr. Alex shot a suspicious glance at Felix, then cleared his throat and asked, "But what is this anyway?" He replied immediately, "That's milk, sir." Clasping her hands together, Rena explained with an embarrassed blush. Oh, I'm the one who made that. If you don't want to eat it, that's fine too. The moment he heard her say that, Mr. Alex immediately froze. Then the entire family, for some reason, suddenly stared at her in unison, wide-eyed with shock, thinking, Rena cooked this herself? Mr. Alex suddenly cracked a very mischievous smile, thinking to himself that he would be the first to get a bite. The moment he finished that thought, before he could even lift a finger, someone else in the house was one step ahead and snatched it from under him, making him ask in shock, What the? Joffrey said nothing, just calmly flashing a triumphant smile, because he was the victor in this battle for the food. Seeing this, Mr. Alex's face darkened as he scowled and asked, That one? While casually enjoying his prize, Joffrey's eyes crinkled as he praised it. Wow, Rena, this is so good. He raised his voice in annoyance. You have to follow the house rules, you little brat. Put that fork down. He didn't respond verbally, just gave Joffrey a judgmental look. Then he puffed out his cheeks in a sulk. In the blink of an eye, the plate of food that Rena had personally made was devoured by the entire Despencer family. Evelyn praised it with a bright smile. This is truly delicious. Joffrey immediately chimed in. It sure is. Hearing them, Rena beamed happily and said, I'll make it for everyone again next time. Alex suddenly objected loudly. Absolutely not. This startled Rena a bit, and she replied, Oh, then lowered her head sadly, recalling Maurice's harsh words. About the food she used to cook. Eggs again? Is there nothing else? Ugh, it stinks. Then she thought to herself, It makes sense though. Maurice gets tired of things so easily. He'd get sick of eating delicious dishes like this every day, like the ones I cook. Afraid Rena would misunderstand, Felix quickly clarified. I didn't bring you here to make you work in the kitchen. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Mr. Alex then smiled kindly and proposed, Anyway, for my birthday, I'd like to eat a meal like this as a gift. Could you make it for me? Joffrey suddenly shot up and angrily corrected him. It's my birthday! Dad's the only one being stingy. Hearing this, Eden frowned and chided, You always pull the youngest child card. It'd be weird if it didn't work. Just then, Rena spoke up. Yes, I'll do it! A moment later, Mr. Alex made a sound, then turned to Felix and asked, Come to think of it, how are things going with Duke Conwan? He replied in a low voice. We're not at the stage where I can talk about that yet. He asked impatiently. I'm curious about the process. He immediately stated firmly. I will tell you when the time is right, father. Right. Seeing Felix dare to take that tone with him, he was a bit taken aback and mumbled, Why is he so touchy? Fine then. Eden, you're well prepared too, right? Eden replied, Yes, father, while looking down at the table. Felix couldn't help but think with regret. My wife made this, but I'm the only one who didn't get to eat any. While Felix was still lamenting not getting to eat the dish Rena had personally made, she sat quietly beside him, watching Evelyn sternly remind her youngest son, The new school term will be starting before you know it. While holding his head, Jeffrey answered wearily, I know already, I said I know already, clenching his fists. Rena thought to herself in silence. At Homewood, everyone just ate without saying a word. I wonder if one day I'll have something to talk about here too. While Rena was lost in thought, Evelyn suddenly spoke up. Rena, are you finished eating? She immediately replied, Yes, I'm done. She smiled gently and suggested, Then you should go and rest first. Sweating, Rena stammered in response. What? But I still have to clean up. She trailed off, lowering her head slightly with a sigh. Then she slowly stood up and said, Okay. With that, she quickly headed for the door, but just as she was about to leave, Evelyn suddenly spoke. Rena, by the way, would you like to join me for tea this afternoon? Hearing this, Rena beamed and replied, Yes. Then she quickly bowed goodbye before opening the door and leaving. Alex suddenly whined. Honey, what about me? She replied sternly, Absolutely not. It's just for us girls. Then she thought to herself, he's been so whiny lately. He never used to be like this. With his 2 index fingers pressed to his lips and tears welling in his eyes, Alex mumbled pitifully, But we have tea together sometimes, and I barely get to talk to Rena. She paid him no mind and continued her thoughts. What was it? He was always the first one to bring up adopting a child, but I suppose bringing a daughter into the family isn't a bad idea. Alex suddenly started wailing. Honey, Evelyn calmly continued her thought. They say people get more childish as they get older, don't they? That afternoon, a maid was giving instructions as she led Rena down the hall. The madam's room is just a short walk from here, Rena replied. Okay. Then she thought in amazement, as she looked around. There are so many unique decorations. As if suddenly remembering something important, the green-haired maid turned back to her and introduced herself with a small smile. Oh, that's right. I haven't introduced myself yet, have I? My name is Jen, and I'll be in charge of taking care of you, Miss Rena. From now on, if you need anything, please just call for me. Rena broke out in a sweat and replied, flustered, Ah, that. You don't have to worry about me. And she tilted her head slightly, asking, Pardon? Startled, Rena awkwardly explained, Ah, no, I mean, if I need anything, I'll call. Jen replied, Ah, very well. Just then, there was a knock on the door, and Evelyn's voice called out, Come in. As Rena opened the door and entered, she said politely, Pardon the intrusion. Evelyn gracefully invited her. Please, come in. I do apologize. Please go ahead and have some tea. I just need to finish this one thing. Hearing this, she replied, Okay. Then she slowly lifted the teacup and thought to herself, It smells so wonderful. Evelyn suddenly asked, Are you pleased with your room? I prepared it myself, although I'm not quite sure what girls like these days, so please feel free to decorate it to your own liking whenever you wish. She immediately insisted, Oh no, that's not it at all. I love it. Although, now that I think about it, the wardrobe is a little strange. There must have been some kind of mistake. She suddenly stood up, clapped her hands, and exclaimed, That's right, so it is a closet, huh? No, as expected, it's not a closet, it's a walk-in closet. So it was a walk-in closet, a bit overwhelming, isn't it? At that, Rena frantically waved her hands to explain. Oh no, that's not it at all. There are just so many things in the closet. Thinking she was being disrespectful in someone else's room, she said as she bowed her head slightly. She remembered the pair of shoes she had taken the liberty of trying on and couldn't help but gasp in admiration. Wow, they're so beautiful. Then, with a glimmer of hope, she thought to herself, Since they're so beautiful, it'll be fine if I just try them on for a little bit, right? Afraid that Rena would misunderstand and think she was being scolded, Evelyn quickly began to explain, Oh my, well you see, all of that is a gift we prepared for you, Rena. Her eyes widened, and she asked blankly, What? The lady then gently elaborated. The coats are from Alex, the elegant pieces are from Felix, the red dresses are from Eden, and the cute bags and accessories are from Jeffrey. Everyone's tastes are so different, so I wanted to see who prepared the more interesting gifts. Rena murmured her thanks. Thank you, madam, Evelyn replied with a bashful laugh. Everyone went to the trouble of preparing this together, so it feels a bit odd for me to take all the credit. Upon hearing that, Rena was moved and said, Thank you, mother. Hearing herself being called mother, she gave a shy smile and a soft sigh, then gently asked, Well, shall we get to the main reason for our tea today? Rena replied, Yes. Then, while wiping away her tears, she wondered with a glimmer of hope, Am I truly being welcomed? Evelyn suddenly asked Rena with curiosity, Is there anything you want to do? Her eyes widened in surprise as she asked back, Excuse me? The lady explained kindly, Times have changed now. We have to teach our daughters the skills they need to be able to live on their own. Rena didn't answer, her eyes remaining wide as she thought in shock. That's right. The marriage is for 2 years. 2 years. After those 2 years. That's right. In 2 years I might be kicked out. Do I have to start preparing now? To be able to survive even if I'm kicked out of here? Beside the large and tall window, light shone through the clear glass pane, illuminating the luxurious furniture inside the room. A warm voice then rang out, All right, so what have you studied so far? For history, you only need to know the basics, came the reply. On the table, a teacup was filled to the brim. The outside of the teacup was exquisitely decorated with fine patterns, as Evelyn's voice carried on at a steady pace. Personally, I think it would be better if you studied philosophy or psychology, or perhaps painting, or some kind of musical instrument would be fine as well. We will frequently visit art museums and the theater too. It'll be very fun. As if she realized something, her gaze shifted slightly to Rena's sullen face. An indescribable emotion flashed in her eyes. Seeing Rena's expression, she called out to her in worried surprise, Rena, if you don't want to, you don't have to do any of it. Evelyn stepped forward and took her hands, saying gently, It's just that knowing the basics would be for the best. She thought to herself, There are so many enemies in Despencer Bay right now. If she just steps into the world of the upper class, in her current state, this child will only get hurt and lose her self-confidence. Her gentle voice continued, giving sincere advice. Rena, I'm not forcing you to do anything right now, but I hope you'll find something you truly like by experiencing everything. Hearing that, Rena lowered her eyes and replied softly, Yes, I will do that. The tea party ended there. Yes, all right, you must be tired, so go back and get some rest. Yes. Right after that, Rena slowly walked to the door, and Evelyn smiled gently from behind, waving goodbye as she left. The room immediately became quiet, with only a faint emptiness enveloping it. Evelyn sat there quietly, lost in thought as if she were conversing with her own deepest secrets. She understood the child's circumstances and pain, so she didn't say much. Fearing it would be strange to say she had been watching from a corner of the room for a long time, she tilted her head slightly, and heavy thoughts once again welled up inside her. It really is better to talk about it. Returning to her room, Rena plopped down on the bed, her gaze distant, drifting into an endless stream of thoughts. Josie has a private tutor, and Maurice attends the Royal Academy. They're both smarter than me, who can barely even read. What do I want to do when everything is finished? I'll be busy catching up on sleep because I feel pretty tired. As she broke from her thoughts, a question popped into her head. If so, would it be a good idea to read a book then? If I start studying now, can I do well? Right after that, Rena gently lay back on the bed. Something I want to do? That question echoed in her mind, pulling fragments of memories to the surface, the image of a pair of slender hands, gliding over the keys of a piano, gradually becoming clear in a large, luxurious room. Lucy sat primly at the piano in a secluded corner, while Rena quietly held a mop, her eyes unable to look away. Returning to the present, Rena's eyes gently closed. In that moment, a whisper echoed from deep within her mind. I want to learn piano. But just as night began to fall, a knock was heard at the door. A maid standing outside called out, "Young miss, it's time for dinner. Please wake up, Miss Rena." The calls echoed, but Rena slept soundly. Her face was flushed, and she wasn't responding. Sensing that something was wrong, the maid immediately ran to inform everyone. She screamed, her voice filled with urgency and fear, "Madam, the young miss seems to be in terrible pain." Hearing this, Evelyn froze for a beat, her voice filled with panic as she yelled, "Do! Call Joshua immediately!" The room, with its light brown wooden floors, radiated a gentle warmth. The light from the ceiling lamp flickered, casting shadows that made the space feel even more silent. However, that tranquility was soon shattered by a heart-wrenching sob that seemed to fill the entire room. And there was Evelyn, sitting on the floor in a corner, sobbing her heart out, her choked voice filled with self-blame. "It's my fault. I pushed Rena too hard." "Rena, you don't have to do anything at all." The one examining her was the dispenser's head physician, Joshua. His face was incredibly tense, a mixture of stress and bewilderment, as he thought to himself, "I was clearly just at his lordship's house. Let's see. That's right. I was in the middle of dinner, when I was dragged away. My lord, is the young miss really in critical condition?" When I heard the young miss was in danger, I even thought the two families had thrown some wild wedding party. Could it be Felix? When did he get married? Since she's only Felix's fiancée and they aren't married yet, it's not like I wouldn't have been invited to the wedding. So I confidently stepped out of the carriage and greeted Alec. "Hey, Alec, did you come to get me? Alec, wait, hurry up." When I came to my senses, I was already here. The physician sat there helplessly on the verge of tears, sighing to himself. And what's more, even though I explained it was just a common cold, they've been acting like this for several hours. I want to cry too, you know. My gaze finally shifted gently over to where Evelyn was standing. Aiden is the type who wouldn't cry even if he caught the measles. That's true. If you look at it a certain way, a cold can be quite dangerous. Snapping out of his thoughts, he spoke up, looking at her physical condition and skin. It's clear the cause is malnutrition. The medicine and nutritional supplements will be prepared and sent over tomorrow. It's really just a cold, so there's no need for everyone to worry so much. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll be on my way. In the dead of night, the carriage slowly rolled away with a clatter, departing from the silent estate. Late at night, the sky wore a cloak of deep black velvet, dazzling with countless twinkling stars scattered all across it. Rena's room was silent, when suddenly the door was opened by someone, letting light from the outside spill in, chasing away some of the darkness in the room. The sound of approaching footsteps was heard, and then the person gently pulled a chair up to her bed. It was Felix. He sat silently in the chair, his pensive eyes watching her sleep. Rena was in a deep sleep, her face peaceful. His ocean blue eyes gazed softly at her, an unspoken emotion flashing within them. Malnutrition, he thought to himself. 4 years ago, at the orphanage, he was at a simple house located in the middle of a spacious and peaceful courtyard when an earnest call suddenly rang out. "Joffrey is over here, Joffrey." Back then, Felix was in a rush for some reason. Joffrey was by a large tree, sitting there and softly calling out to him. At that moment, Rena, who was sitting nearby, also glanced over to where he was standing. The past came flooding back, a small hand gently tending to a wound, and a gentle voice saying, "This must hurt a lot. Just make sure to disinfect it properly when you get back, and it'll heal in no time." And so, Joffrey sat leaning against the tree, his small knee bandaged, and said softly, "Thank you." Just then, Felix and Eden walked over. Eden's gentle voice spoke up, "We owe you one." Rena replied, confused, "Do you know this child?" Hearing that, Felix let out a small "ah," and Eden immediately jumped in for him with a cheerful smile. "Yes, we know each other very well. We came to volunteer at the orphanage, but this little guy wandered off, so we went looking for him. And we were lucky enough to have a kind person like you help him. It's no big deal, but since you've already been so helpful, could you also show us the way back to the orphanage?" Hearing that, she asked hesitantly, bewildered, "Huh? Don't tell me you two also got lost looking for Joffrey?" Eden, still smiling brightly, answered right away, "Yes, we got lost too." Meanwhile, Felix just subtly glanced away, as a silent confirmation. Seeing their reactions, Rena spoke softly. I happen to be on my way back. Ah, you can just follow me this way. Thank you. The atmosphere at that moment became strangely peaceful. Here, inside a room in a simple house, medical supplies were arranged neatly. A gentle, reassuring voice rang out. There, all better now. Joffrey's leg was carefully bandaged. He cheered with a relieved voice. It doesn't hurt anymore. Rena gently advised him. If you come to volunteer in the future, be very careful when you go into the forest behind the orphanage. There are a lot of dens, and if you go too deep, you'll find a lot of snakes. Joffrey replied clearly, Yes, I'll be careful from now on. Standing to the side, Felix and Eden thought to themselves, the whole picnic thing was a lie. Joffrey just didn't want to volunteer, so he tried to ditch, but ended up getting lost instead. All of a sudden, the door burst open, and two little boys peeked their heads in, their faces beaming as they shouted, You're in here? Rena's here, and she turned to look, slightly startled. The brown-haired boy spoke up, Rena, come play with us. The children's faces were beaming, their eyes sparkling with anticipation. Rena smiled and replied, I know, I just have to put the medicine away first, so you guys go on and play ahead. Okay, we got it. The brown-haired boy walked over to where Joffrey was sitting, and asked, Do you want to play with us? Sure, let's go, you too. The brown-haired boy went up to Felix and said, You should come play with us too. Felix chuckled in response, Maybe I should? Hearing that, Rena glanced over and immediately said, This person is going to help me clean up, so you all go play ahead. Okay, hearing this, a confused Felix thought to himself, When did I agree to that? By the window, as gentle sunlight streamed in, a hand gently wrung out a washcloth. Drops of water fell from it, like tiny crystal beads. Rena placed the cloth on his forehead, her voice reassuring as she said, It's medicine to bring down a fever, so you should feel better soon. Lying on the bed, Felix's eyes showed his confusion as he hesitantly asked, How? How did you know I had a fever? A thought flashed through his mind. No one's ever seen me like this before. Rena smiled and slowly explained, Trying to hide an illness is bound to be discovered one way or another. When we're together, I can notice your temperature rising from time to time, and your cheeks get flushed like this. Felix froze when he heard that, retorting defensively, They're not that red. She just chuckled and then gently advised, Just close your eyes for about 30 minutes, and you'll feel much better when you wake up. I'll tell the others that we're cleaning the storage room together, so don't worry about a thing, and just rest comfortably. Outside, the children chattered and played, their laughter echoing through the air. In the middle of it all, a little girl looked up expectantly, whispering to herself, Isn't Rena coming yet? Rena started to leave and said with a smile, I'll be back to wake you in 30 minutes. Sleep well. Felix replied in a low voice, Thank you, feeling a bit flustered and a strange stirring inside him. Later on, Rena had something to do, so the director woke me up instead, and after that, I would occasionally visit the orphanage to make donations or volunteer. But meeting again after such a long time was like a chance encounter, almost like a miracle. As time quietly passed, on a beautiful sunny day, Rena gently held something in her hand while walking and chatting with the little girl next to her. Their clear laughter rang out, brightening up the entire courtyard. Seeing that familiar figure, Joffrey's face lit up, his eyes filled with joy as he called out eagerly, Rena. Outside, Joffrey and Felix stood together, their eyes following Rena as she walked out. Suddenly, Joffrey seemed to freeze. A strange, unnameable glint flashed in his eyes, but time passes so quickly. And now, at this moment, Rena doesn't recognize us anymore, and Joffrey's face fell. A heavy sadness fell over him. Felix just looked at him quietly, not knowing what to say. But right after that, Joffrey forced a cheerful smile and spoke to reassure himself. It's okay. Rena not recognizing me just means I've grown up in a flash. It's better if she doesn't remember the image of me bawling my eyes out. Felix just stood thoughtfully beside him, his deep gaze following him. He thought to himself, It's actually a shame, but whether Rena remembers or not, the kindness I've received from her hasn't changed. I've promised to repay Rena in any way I can. But back in the present, his thoughts still lingered. Rena even noticed my pain. Suddenly, a sound cut through Felix's thoughts, and he turned to look at her, puzzled. He thought, rumble? On the bed, Rena had woken up at some point, her face beet red. Her eyes were flustered and embarrassed because her own hungry stomach had rumbled in the quiet room. In the dim room, with only a faint light streaming in from the window, a quiet atmosphere filled every corner. Lying in bed, Rena slowly woke up, her eyes still shut tight and her mind foggy from a long sleep. She thought groggily, My head hurts so much. When did I fall asleep? Oh right, am I sick? Rena slowly opened her eyes. I've never even had a cold before. Just then, Rena faintly noticed something was off. Her drowsy eyes glanced to the side. Felix was sitting quietly in a chair by the bed, lost in thought. Seeing him, Rena's heart suddenly began to pound. How long has he been there? And why is he here anyway? Before she could find an answer, an unexpected sound suddenly came from her stomach. making Rena freeze. She immediately panicked, her hands gripping the blanket tightly. My stomach. Felix was slightly startled, his surprised gaze flickering toward her with a flustered expression, as if unsure how to react to the innocent situation. Felix chuckled softly and said, "You're awake?" Rena replied, flustered and embarrassed. "Yes." Right after that, Felix moved to sit on her bed, then gently reached out his hand. He gently placed his hand on her forehead, his low voice saying, "Looks like your fever has gone down a lot." Rena thought to herself, "This is the first time I've ever been taken care of like this. I don't know why I feel so shy." Suddenly, his voice cut through her thoughts. "You must be hungry, right? I'll bring some food from the kitchen. Let me go get it. You get some rest." With that, the door closed softly, and the room fell silent again. Rena thought to herself, "He left already. He's so fast with those long legs. Am I this sweaty?" The kitchen is downstairs, so I need to hurry up and shower before he gets back. The mansion was still brightly lit. Felix walked quietly down the hall, feeling a bit hesitant. He wondered if warm milk would be okay, or if a fragrant black tea would be better. Thinking about it, Felix stopped and decided to head back to her room to ask which one she preferred. The door to her room opened once again. He stepped inside, softly calling her name, Rena. His eyes scanned the room, and he wondered to himself, where is she? Suddenly, his expression froze, his eyes widening in utter shock as if he had just seen something he shouldn't have. Rena was standing in the corner of the room, her hands frozen halfway through, taking off her shirt, her fair shoulders exposed under the dim light. Catching his gaze, she was utterly mortified, her face flushing beet red as her heart pounded in her chest before she could even think. A scream ripped through the air, echoing throughout the mansion. Without hesitation, Felix immediately slammed the door shut and went outside. Looking back, Rena marveled to herself that she could scream so loudly. Outside, Felix was kneeling on the floor with his head bowed. Eden and Joffrey started yelling, "Dude, what the hell did you do?" "You couldn't hold back and did something, could you? You really know how to make a big scene. Is this a misunderstanding or are you just a pervert?" Having heard the commotion, his younger brothers had rushed over and were now furious. A new day began in a peaceful atmosphere. Someone's soft voice said, "The shot might sting a little bit." "A sting? She's not very good with that." That was Joshua's voice, a gentle reminder. "Even if the medicine is bitter, make sure to finish it all and don't take it on an empty stomach." Joshua was treating me so gently, just like I was a child. "You're almost all better, so don't get careless now." Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Evelyn came in carrying a tea tray and asked, "Aren't you bored being cooped up in your room all day? I squeezed some lemonade for you since the vitamin C is good for you. You have some with Rena, dear. She still hasn't fully recovered, so don't stay for too long." "I understand." The sky today was a brilliant blue, with white clouds drifting lazily by. "Yes." Sitting on the sofa, Rena complimented, "This lemonade is so sweet. Mother must have added honey and warmed it up to make it easier to drink. It tastes better, doesn't it?" "Yes, it's delicious," she thought to herself, a feeling of gratitude welling up inside her. "I've been out of it for the past few days since I was sick, but everyone has treated me so well, even telling me to eat high-calorie foods." Everyone's caring words echoed in her mind, "Don't get sick." "Still, you look much better today." "No, I'm truly sorry. I should have paid more attention. Rena, I won't make you regret coming to our home." "Rena, you don't have to do anything at all. Even though they say that, if I don't make an effort, I won't be able to secure my place here." Snapping out of her thoughts, Rena spoke softly. "Mother, about what you mentioned before. You mean about my studies?" "Yes, I'll do it. I will study very diligently." Evelyn smiled and gently reminded her, "You really don't need to try so hard, you know. Your health is the most important thing." Rena's hands, resting on her lap, clenched slightly as she hesitated to respond. "I'm embarrassed because I don't know anything at all, so I want to learn more. I'm a member of the family, so I can't bring shame upon everyone." Hearing that, she was momentarily stunned, her eyes widening in surprise. Rena's voice continued, filled with determination. I also want to be more confident in the future." Evelyn smiled. "Rena, thank you so much." As dusk fell in the wine cellar, a glass of red wine was poured. Felix gently took a sip, then let out a weary sigh. He thought she wouldn't come home anymore after that day, quietly chiding himself. "I came for work, but since I'm back, shouldn't I apologize to Rena? No matter how rushed I was, I still just walked in without knocking." Suddenly, footsteps approached him, and a voice called out, "Hey Felix, when did you get back?" Felix was slightly startled. This voice. Then a voice rang out, "I see you've been spending money." "And it was the Duke of Cromwell, Lloyd Cromwell," Lloyd said cheerfully. "I hear you've spent quite a bit of money?" Felix didn't reply, his gaze dropping. He thought to himself, rumors sure do travel fast. "Well, I have been spending money like water lately, so it would be strange if there weren't any rumors." Next, a clear image of Maurice appeared, standing beside the hood of a shiny car, with a radiant smile as if showing off a trophy. That's the standard price for promoting a marriage between their daughter and a Viscount, an amount I had already anticipated, and it was worth finding out. It's all because of that incompetent and greedy couple that such a noble family has been driven to the point of bankruptcy. Besides, the eldest son, Maurice Homegood, is quite foolish and has no ambition, so he's not a concern. That expensive car. But the person I really need to worry about is Rosie Homegood, who has always lived a life of luxury and looks down on Rena without a shred of sympathy. Although I met her at the ball, I still lack detailed information about her. Just then, Lloyd sat down in the chair next to him, his excited voice interrupting Felix's train of thought. Right? An amount like that isn't a big deal for a dispenser, is it? Anyway, you've already spent the money, so this isn't the time to be seen every day. Looking so regretful, is it? If not that, then what is it? Right. Suddenly his gaze shifted somewhere below, casually talking about men's affairs? Hearing that, Felix retorted irritably, "You'll go blind if you keep that up." Those words just made Lloyd laugh harder. "You know I like you even more when you're like this." "My apologies. I sometimes forget I look like a creep when I act like this." "So, are you really not going to say anything? About your wife, I mean?" "When I heard you were here, I dropped everything to come out," Felix replied coldly. "I didn't ask you to come," Lloyd said quietly. "If you won't tell me, I'll just find out myself, right?" The moment he said that, Felix's expression darkened. Just then, a deep, warm voice cut through the tense atmosphere. "What are you planning to investigate now?" The voice belonged to a man with long white hair, leaning leisurely against a chair. It seems the Duke is antsy because he can't get the scoop. As soon as Felix saw him, Lloyd smiled brightly and replied, "You're here, Aaron?" Felix merely glanced over. He cursed inwardly. "Don't you ever get tired of following me around?" The man with the long white hair spoke softly. "Am I a bit late?" And that's Count Aaron Hack, who's been with Lloyd since their Royal Academy days. He was the valedictorian. Just thinking about those two made Felix feel exhausted and helpless. Thinking to himself, that's when it all started for me. The sound of their cheerful conversation bounced around the luxurious mansion. But no matter what, I still think the House of Homegood is on the verge of collapse, am I right? If it were Felix, better families would surely line up for him. Yep, the handsome looks and outstanding achievements of the Royal Academy's first-year valedictorian. That's truly a one-of-a-kind accomplishment for a Viscount. He's the perfect son every parent wants, indifferent to everything. If the young ladies who admire Felix knew, there would surely be a sea of tears. Hearing those words, an image of Felix frowning in annoyance appeared. "Why are you guys like this? Are you going to bring that person to the absolution ceremony? Then we can meet at the festival." Lloyd's gaze flickered over to him. Suddenly Felix calmly stood up and said in a low voice, "You two seem to have a lot to talk about, so I'll be leaving first." Lloyd hurriedly said, "All right, I get it. I won't mention it anymore. Let's talk about work." But Felix paid him no mind. His unhurried footsteps echoed in the vast space of the mansion as Lloyd cried out in alarm, "Are you really leaving?" His face fell slightly, feeling sad inside. "Aren't we close enough to talk about that kind of stuff?" Seeing this, Aaron, who was next to him, reassured him. "That kid's personality has been like that since he was little." The door slowly opened. Outside, the sunset was streaked with dark purple. Felix stepped out, his face pensive, a thought echoing in his mind. The absolution ceremony isn't far off now. At a mansion with a simple yet elegant design, in that setting, a voice rang out, "The landscape painting you brought back this time is truly beautiful." Hearing that, Rena happily asked back, "Really?" "It's true, I wanted it too, but your father snatched it away." Alex's voice was full of triumph. "You'll have to be quicker next time, my dear wife." And Rena said softly, "The spring at Santita's castle. I'll paint an even more beautiful picture and hang it in your study, Mom. Please wait for me." Evelyn crossed her arms and said quietly, "There are many noble families hunting for your paintings." Suddenly she changed the subject, her eyes seeming to understand something. "But, did you two have a fight?" Caught off guard by the question, Rena let out a confused sound, and she explained, "I mean you and Felix, did something happen between you two? If you go to Flat Hill, you won't be able to come back, and you won't be able to have the engagement ceremony." At the mention of him, her face immediately flushed red as she began to stammer. "No, not at all, we didn't fight." Then she thought to herself, "Come to think of it, after that day, we haven't seen each other at all. Was he hurt because of my reaction that day?" "Yes," Evelyn spoke up. "Even though the engagement ceremony hasn't been held yet, you've been a dispenser ever since you came here, you understand?" Hearing this, Rena's cheeks flushed slightly, mixed with happiness. "Yes, I understand, Mother. Also, I have something I want to give you. I originally planned to give it to you at the engagement ceremony, but I don't know when that will be held, so I'm giving it to you now." Evelyn then picked up a square wooden box, and upon seeing the box, Rena marveled to herself. Just the box alone screamed expensive. She said hesitantly, her voice full of awkwardness, "I've already received so much. I've gotten so many things from Jeffrey too. Gifts, thank you. But this is..." At that moment, Jeffrey said confidently, "This is just for you to know, Rena, but I earn my own money, so this is nothing at all." And when the lid gently clicked open, The light from the diamonds immediately reflected, casting a brilliant, sparkling aura. Knowing he was just saying that to get her to accept it, Rena stammered in a fluster. "This looks super, 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 super expensive," Evelyn said softly. "A gift this expensive might be a bit much. This is the blue of our family's blessing, yes, so, even if it feels like a burden, please accept it. You're part of our family now, after all." Finally, Rena replied, "Yes, I will treasure it." Immediately after, she let out a faint sigh. She silently grumbled to herself, "That boy Felix. With the festival coming up, I just don't know what to do." As if remembering something, she said, "The Home Goods have been in touch and said they would be stopping by before the festival." Hearing that name, Rena's heart skipped a beat and her entire body went stiff. Her eyes flashed with anxiety and an indescribable fear. "She's coming here?" Those past words resurfaced in Rena's mind. At that moment, Evelyn's gentle voice was reassuring. "So, they're just dropping by for a bit before the festival. If you don't want them to, I'll handle it. Will it be like before?" The image of Lucy in that arrogant dress, her cold hand striking her down, that victorious smirk seared into her memory. Rena's eyes blurred with tears back then. A heavy thought washed over her. "If the people here see that side of me, they won't think of me as family anymore, will they? I'm so scared." Then, the lady's words flashed in her mind. "Even though the engagement ceremony hasn't been held, you've been a Despencer since the day you arrived. Do you understand? You're our family now." Hearing that, Rena immediately felt her spirits lift. "That's right. I'm not Rena Homegoods anymore. I'm Rena Despencer, so everything will be fine." At a table laden with fruit and sweets, a polite voice rang out, "Welcome, Countess. We're so pleased you could make it." And Catherine replied with a bright smile, "I was about to say the same. I never expected such a warm welcome, to this degree." Hearing that, Evelyn replied gently, "You are Rena's guest, after all. I was on my way to the capital and decided to drop in. But where is the dear girl? She's just running a little late with her preparations. She'll be here any moment, so don't you worry." Lucy sneered inwardly, more like she's hiding. There's only one reason they haven't sent out wedding invitations, even though it's already spring, and that's because there won't be a wedding. It looks like she's trying her best to hide her filthy true colors, but where on earth did she go? A little cleaning girl trying to soar. Meanwhile, Rena was steeling herself, then opened the door to step outside. The sneer in Lucy's mind continued. "Rena, this is as far as you go." In that exact moment, as Catherine lifted the teacup to her lips, her gaze caught sight of something across the room. In an instant, the color drained from her face, the tea she had just sipped spewed from her mouth, and her eyes widened in utter shock, as if they had just witnessed something beyond imagination. Rena appeared in a magnificent pink princess dress. She bowed her head slightly as her gentle voice rang out, "I apologize for being late." Lucy glanced over at Rena, her brilliant golden eyes narrowing for a moment, and in that gaze, surprise flashed for an instant before being quickly replaced by a look of annoyed disgust, as if Rena's appearance was something she just couldn't stomach. The older woman spoke up, "Oh my goodness, is that really Rena? Have you been well all this time?" Lucy's voice cut in, each word dripping with sarcasm as her fingers tapped the side of her teacup. "Such perfect timing, how unbelievable." "Yes, since you're here anyway, go make me some milk tea. You are Rena, the kitchen maid, after all." Hearing that, Rena's hands unconsciously tightened on the hem of her dress. Those scornful, sarcastic words were still uttered. "That's what you always did, isn't it?" Evelyn immediately spoke up. "You don't have to do that, Rena." Then she turned to her voice filled with annoyance and irritation. "When the maids bring the tea, I'll give it to her." Seeing the lady's actions, Rena was utterly astonished. Right after, she smiled softly, a flicker of happiness appearing in her eyes. "So this is what it feels like, to have someone on your side." Snapping out of her thoughts, Rena spoke reassuringly, "It's all right. She is my guest, so I can certainly do this much." Seeing her request granted, the corners of Lucy's lips curled into an arrogant smirk as she thought to herself, "That's more like it. No matter how she tries to hide it, her old self suits her much better." Finishing her thought, she stood up and said, "While I wait for the tea, is it all right if I take a look around?" The older woman sitting next to her cried out, "Dear, where are you going? This rosy child is so strange." But Lucy was already gone, and with standards lowered to this point, it seems she's managed to earn a bit of money. She walked on, her eyes scanning the surroundings to assess them. "The decorations are quite nice. Let's see how much she's managed to swindle." Lucy's gaze suddenly stopped on something. Seeing a maid walking down the hall, Lucy called out in a commanding tone, "Hey, you over there, take me to Rena's room." Jen replied nervously, That. Even for a guest, entering the young mistress's room is a bit difficult." The moment she finished speaking, a slap landed squarely on her face, stunning Jen. Lucy glared, hissing in a cold voice, "I don't care how well the people here treat you, but how dare a mere maid talk back to me?" She cradled her cheek, tears streaming down her red face as she trembled. Lucy's voice was heavy with threat. I won't say it a second time, so lead the way now. With no other choice, Lucy was led to Rena's room. She casually threw the door wide open. Looking inside, her gaze froze. Here we are? She immediately growled. What is this? Did you even guide me properly? Jen replied fearfully in a small voice. Yes, this is the right place, ma'am. If you are finished looking, please step outside. Lucy silently glanced at her and then, ignoring her words, slammed the door shut. Lucy stood casually in Rena's room, cursing inwardly. And now this, all for that lowly little wench. She started pulling out the dresses to look at them, her eyes filled with a mixture of stunned disbelief and envy. She prepared all of this? She picked up a piece of brilliant red fabric. She frowned upon seeing the expensive fabric, her eyes scanning the room before landing on a box that had been opened. Inside were all sorts of expensive things, from red fabric and jewelry to shoes. Lucy scanned the surrounding room, then her gaze landed on a spot, and she thought to herself, if that's the case, there has to be more than just this. Just a moment later, she walked over to a desk and pulled open a drawer, revealing the square wooden box containing the gift Evelyn had given to Miss Lucy. Lucy smirked coldly. I knew it, hiding this kind of stuff in here. Isn't that just too naive? A while later, Evelyn sighed wearily, complaining that she could never host that guest a second time. Rena spoke softly, her words full of sincerity. I thank you, Mother. Thanks to you, I was able to see those two off, without any trouble. Let's go now. They've already left? And also, she gently stroked her head, her voice warm. This is what the prestigious young lady of House Despencer truly looks like, isn't it? Thank you for giving me courage. Hearing that, Rena smiled brightly with happiness, her heart feeling warm. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Lucy wore a triumphant smile, her golden eyes gleaming with cunning. You really went through a lot of trouble, Rena. Early in the morning, sunlight streamed through the window, chasing away the darkness and signaling the start of a new day. Rena stretched gently, letting out a long yawn after a deep sleep. An unshed tear still lingered at the corner of her eye as she thought to herself, I can't believe it's a new day already. She groggily walked to the desk, slowly pulling open the supposedly empty drawer while thinking in a daze. I must have passed out the moment I got back to my room. But in that instant, her grogginess completely disappeared. Rena froze, shocked, speechless. She let out a gasp, then immediately called out, her voice filled with panic. Dien, Dien, Dien. Startled, Dien, who was standing outside, replied, What is it? Then, a flustered Rena asked, Did you by any chance clean my room yesterday? No, milady. The Grand Madam instructed us not to disturb you, so I only brought in the bedding after you fell asleep. Then did anyone else enter my room? Hearing this, as if she'd been struck right where it hurts, she immediately froze, her body stiff, and her hands began to tremble with fear. Immediately, she dropped to her knees and quickly began to speak. Please forgive me, young lady. The truth is, one of yesterday's guests asked me to show her around. After hearing those words, Rena was stunned silent, her eyes filled with confusion. She lowered her head to look into the drawer. Seeing this, Ken called out worriedly, Milady, Rena replied wearily in a low voice. First of all, don't tell anyone about this. Outside in the brilliant garden, roses were in full bloom under a clear, high blue sky, yet Rena's face was still tinged with a faint sadness. Her gaze rested silently on the rosebush, her hand gently lifting a pale pink rose stem, as if trying to grasp onto some fragile piece. The memory from earlier flashed through her mind. She had stared at Dien, shocked and bewildered, while Dien sobbed her heart out. Tears streamed down Dien's swollen cheek. Josie must have struck her for not obeying. It was exactly how they used to treat me. Sitting in the middle of the vibrant rose garden, she wondered, what am I supposed to do now? Just a moment later, tears silently streamed down Rena's fair face. Gripped by self-reproach, she whispered brokenly, Evelyn, I'm so sorry. Evelyn put her full trust in me. She entrusted everything to me, and yet the thought made her chest ache. Uncontrollable sobs burst out. I should have been more careful. I should have realized it right away. What if I can never find it again? Then, just at that moment, footsteps on the lush green grass approached where she sat. A deep, warm voice gently called out, Rena. Along with it, a delicate handkerchief was held out to her. It was Eden. He leaned down, a gentle smile on his lips. Seeing him, Rena quickly wiped away her tears with her hand. Eden quickly told her, Don't wipe them like that. Rena, flustered and embarrassed, stammered, This is because. Seeing her expression, Eden seemed to understand. He sighed softly, gave a small smile, and then asked, Is life here that difficult for you? His words made Rena freeze as her thoughts began to race. Even though I want to say that's not it, but if I tell Eden the truth, her thought was interrupted as Eden gently reached out and touched her hand. Rena looked at him, surprised. Eden gently reassured her, If it's too difficult to talk about, you don't have to say anything. Everyone has days where they just want to cry, right? Today is one of those days for you, Rena, isn't it? If that's the case, it's okay. His words seemed to seep right into her heart. Rena's clear golden eyes widened, and in that instant, a smile blossomed on her face. Eden said in a flustered voice, "Rena, please don't cry." He lightly scratched his cheek. He awkwardly thought to himself, "Did I make her cry for a second time?" After wiping away the tears from her face, Rena's bright smile returned, and her voice was cheerful as she said, "Thank you, Eden. Thanks to you, I've calmed down now. I'll wash this handkerchief and return it to you." She gently placed the handkerchief neatly on her lap. Then she continued, "You know of the blue of blessing, right? I've lost it." Eden froze, his voice alarmed. "What? You mean that?" "Yes, or to be more precise, my sister took it." Instantly, Eden muttered a curse under his breath. "Son of a..." Suddenly, Rena grew pensive, her distant gaze veiled in a mist of sadness, her voice as soft as the wind. "If Josie wants something, she'll do whatever it takes to get it. A part of me hopes that's not what happened, but..." As she finished, she lowered her head. Worried, Eden called out beside her, "Rena!" The moment he said her name, Rena sat up straight, her eyes filled with determination. Her determined voice rang out, "That's why I'm going to get it back." Realizing her outburst, she flusteredly explained, "Although, I'm not sure if I can even get into Home Good. Or not, but I'm sure I could get it back if I could just meet her and ask for it directly, right?" Hearing this, Eden chuckled and then said softly, "If you just need to meet Josie, you don't have to go all the way there. You can see her in the capital during the festival." Realization dawned on her, and she became incredibly excited. Her face flushed as she thought to herself, "That's right, the festival." Eden's voice chimed in again, half joking and half serious. "So no one's there? I almost ended up visiting an empty mansion. In that case, let's go to the festival together. To find the blue of blessing. I may not be as good as my brother, but I'll do my best to help you." Hearing that, Rena laughed, her eyes curved into crescent moons. Then, Eden gently squeezed her hand as if to reassure her. His deep, warm voice rang out, "Rena, honestly, I'm so relieved that you weren't crying earlier because of your life here. Everyone was worried that you would struggle and living all alone in a strange place. So, if things ever get difficult, please tell someone, just like you did today. Promise me that today is the last day you'll cry alone. We're family now." Those words were like a warm flame that lit up Rena's heart. Her cheeks immediately flushed red as she whispered, "Okay." 2 desks were shrouded in silence as Eden quietly wrote his letters, the words both a report and a personal note. "I've escorted Rena as you asked, but remember that if things keep on like this for 2 more years, the person walking down the aisle might not be you anymore." On the other side, Felix finished the letter and scratched his head, his brow deeply furrowed. His face was a mask of irritation. Suddenly Lloyd, who was relaxing with a newspaper, spoke up, his voice gentle but laced with sarcasm. "He's not wrong, you know. Time flies." Hearing this, Felix angrily slammed the letter onto the desk, his voice erupting. "Do you even know what you're saying right now?" Lloyd frowned slightly. He glanced over, his voice growing serious. "Hey Felix, get a grip. I don't know what happened between you two, but running away is not the answer." But just a moment later, Lloyd's playful demeanor returned, his lips twisting into a half smile. "Of course, this is all pretty standard stuff, but if you want to see her, then you'd better go see her in person this time." Felix just remained silent at his words, closing his eyes without another response. Somewhere else, Rena sat in her seat, her mood deeply gloomy, an indescribable sadness on her face. Eden, sitting opposite her, watched her without wavering, his voice full of concern. "Rena, are you really okay? You look a little pale. If the carriage ride is the problem, we can slow down a bit." Rena quickly tried to reassure him. "It's not that, I'm just very nervous." As soon as she said it, she sighed, telling herself that this time, she absolutely had to get her back. She remembered all the times she had avoided Evelyn, and the memory made her heart ache. Why can't I see Rena? Well, the thing is, Rena. Back in the present, tears streamed down her face as she whispered in her heart, "I'm so sorry, Evelyn. You can even yell at me all you want." Suddenly, Eden's voice cut in, pulling her out of her thoughts. "That night, I bet you didn't just talk, right?" Rena was taken aback. "Excuse me?" Eden continued, a playful tone in his voice. "You must have needed to throw a few punches to feel satisfied, am I right?" "No, is that not it?" Rena, flustered, replied, But violence is." Without letting her finish, Eden cut in, "You have to get your revenge." As he spoke, Eden held out his hand to demonstrate. "Here, channel all your strength into your fist, and then let it fly." Rena did as he said, feeling both anxious and thrilled, like this. "Rena, your fist needs to carry all of your struggles." Just then there was a sudden lurch. The startled coachman brought the carriage to an abrupt halt. He quickly turned back and asked with concern, "Are you two okay back there?" Inside, Eden was kneeling on the floor, leaning completely towards Rena with his hand holding hers. The sudden proximity made them both blush beet red as their eyes met awkwardly. Eden quickly spoke up. "No, we're fine." Then, with a lingering shyness on his face, Eden gently reminded her, "Swinging your hand out the window like that is really dangerous." Still flustered, Rena replied, "I'm sorry." Eden then gently released her hand. Rena cupped her own cheeks, her face still bright red with embarrassment, and Eden spoke up to break the awkward silence. "Rena, look outside, it looks like we're here." Heeding his words, Rena looked out the window, and her golden eyes immediately lit up. She was filled with amazement at the scene before her. Outside, the sky had turned a soft orange, about to be swallowed by the sunset. On the grounds, ribbons were hung everywhere, and a bustling crowd was making its way to the party. Rena's voice rang out, full of surprise and excitement. "It's the baptism ceremony! I heard it's the biggest festival in the world! This is so cool!" To the side, Eden let out a soft sigh, muttering to himself, "He's probably here by now." Rena was still brimming with excitement, her eyes shining with curiosity as she looked outside. Eden's thoughts briefly turned to Felix. It might be a bit much, but just because he's lacking a little formality, did it really have to go this far? Breaking from his thoughts, he knocked on the wall and called out, "Please head straight to the square." Hearing that, Rena asked curiously, "Not the hotel, but the square? Father and mother are probably waiting for me. We can go sightseeing later." Eden glanced at her and smiled gently. Not the central square, but the Sapa Lawn Palace Square. Inside the palace, guests had already begun to arrive, each one dressed in elegant attire. "Here," Eden said reassuringly. "Don't be too scared. My older brother is inside too." His words made Rena pause. A sense of unease suddenly washed over her. "It's been 1 month since I've talked to Felix. We haven't spoken again since that day. Will that be okay?" Rena's hand gently took Eden's, and he seemed to notice her expression. He softly called, "Rena." Then, he put an arm around her shoulder. "For now, don't think about anything else and just go on in." Eden smiled and patted her shoulder reassuringly. "I'll wait for you out here." Rena's cheerful expression returned, and she walked inside with a bright smile as Eden thought to himself, "When she heard me say my older brother was also here, she seemed more anxious than relieved. What happened between her and my brother? What if she completely despises my brother?" Rena stepped into the palace, her heart racing, her panicked eyes scanning her surroundings. She was searching for something. Instantly, her gaze fell upon Lucy, who was laughing and chatting in a brilliant red dress that made her stand out from the crowd. Upon seeing her, Rena scowled, her eyes filled with pure hatred. Without hesitating, she strode towards her, her voice sharp and determined. "Lucy!" Startled, Lucy turned her head. Rena continued, her voice fierce. "Give it back to me. It's something extremely important to me." Instantly, murmurs rippled through the crowd. "What's happening?" "It seems Lady Lucy has gotten into some trouble." "Who is that young lady over there?" Then, Lucy brushed Rena's hand off and quickly tried to walk away, her voice sharp with annoyance. "Are you crazy? Just showing up here like this?" Rena shot back, "I'm not leaving this spot until I get it back. What you're holding is a precious item that my mother gave me." Her mouth twisted into a scornful sneer. "You're absolutely ridiculous." After that, Lucy let out a loud, mocking laugh. When the laughter stopped, she turned back, fixing Rena with a sharp, cold gaze filled with contempt. "Hey, you'd better watch your tone. Have you forgotten? You're only living like this right now thanks to me. I'm the one who sent you there. You should be grateful to me, but instead, you're making a fuss over some worthless little trinket. And you dare to show up in front of me like this?" Just then, Lucy held up a brightly sparkling earring. Rena stared at it, stunned. After all, the Viscountess has no idea that this has gone missing, right? Elsewhere, a voice boomed. "What were you thinking, dear?" Evelyn's angry voice rang out. "How could you leave her all alone, when she's never even been introduced to high society, dear?" Hearing this, Eden remained silent with a somber expression, then he spoke up. "Rena is not a child anymore." "How can you say that now?" Eden firmly reassured her. "You don't need to worry. She has a specific reason for being there." He muttered to himself. "I want to tell her, but..." Grumble, grumble. "Back then, Rena had asked me, I want to try it on my own first, so can you please keep it a secret from Mom?" Ilya rested his head in his hands and sighed. "Even so, I'm still a little worried. What if something happens to her there?" Eden said nothing, lost in his thoughts. "I'm the one who wants to be by her side more than anyone, but today, the one by Rena's side isn't me." In a corner of the palace, Lucy's voice rang out, acrid and sharp as a knife. "You're pretty clever, aren't you? Preparing this beforehand in case you get kicked out, right? That way, even if you steal something, you won't get caught, right?" Hearing those words, Rena immediately cried out, her voice full of protest. "No, it's not like that! Gotten a bit of a backbone now, have we?" Instantly, Rena was overcome with a mix of irritation and anger. She retorted, her voice serious and sharp. "Watch your mouth. Do you think everyone in this world is just like you?" Her words struck a nerve, making the other woman tremble with rage. Her face darkened, and she ground out through clenched teeth. You really. Rena didn't back down, continuing in a firm voice. No matter how difficult the circumstances, and no matter how nice and expensive something is, not everyone would steal it like you. As if her sore spot had been hit, unable to take it anymore, she raised her hand, her face contorted as she screamed, "Are you done talking?" At that moment, a glass shattered, and drops of deep red wine spilled out, as if adding to the tension in the air. Lloyd, who was standing right behind Rena, had the deep red wine splashed on the right side of his chest. He looked at her, surprised. Lucy started to blush, calling out shyly, "I'm so sorry, Your Grace." Lloyd replied with a bright smile, "It's all right. I think red suits me quite well." Rena was still bewildered, thinking to herself, that was on purpose just now. Right after, Lloyd glanced over at her and then he winked, giving a reassuring smile. Seeing that, Rena grew even more confused. Suddenly, Lucy's slightly flustered voice cut in, "My apologies for not greeting you sooner. It's been a while, Your Grace. I am Lucy Homegood." "So, you're the young lady of the Homegood family. I can't believe you remember. You're the one marrying into the Despencer family this time, aren't you?" Suddenly, another voice interjected, "No, that's not her." A hand wrapped around Rena's shoulder as a voice spoke up, "It's this young lady, Rena Despencer." Felix looked gently at Rena, confirming in a deep, warm voice, "This is my wife, Duke Conqueo." "Hello, Felix. I just arrived." Right after, his sharp, cold blue eyes glanced over at Lucy, standing there. "I have so much I want to say, but it seems now isn't the right time." Lucy stood there, her face twisted with annoyance. I wondered to myself, what in the world is her relationship with Duke Cromwell? Lloyd came up and teased, "Why would a married couple arrive separately?" "No, I just ran into the Duke a moment ago." But in the end, all because of that girl, Rena, she just stood there silently watching the three of them, her hand clenching the hem of her dress. Immediately, she turned to leave. Seeing this, Rena called out without hesitation, "Wait!" Felix pulled her back and said softly, "Rena, just let her go. But there's still something between us that needs to be settled, and I have to resolve it today, so please trust me and let me go." As soon as she finished speaking, Rena ran after Lucy. Felix and Lloyd just stood there stunned, watching her. "What's with her?" Lloyd asked curiously. "It seems like something is going on. Will she be all right?" Meanwhile, Rena caught up and called out, "Stop. Lucy, we're not done talking yet." She spun around angrily and shouted, "Why do you keep hounding me? Seriously." As she spoke, she grabbed the necklace. "What's so great about this thing that you have to keep bothering me?" In that instant, the precious, sparkling earring was mercilessly thrown onto the floor. Seeing this, tears welled up in her eyes. An indescribable emotion swelled within her. Just then, a voice rang out, "What on earth is that thing, to make our Rena cry?" It was Evelyn. She picked up the earring, her eyes fixed on it. "So it was because of this, huh? The missing piece for our Rena's dress." Around Lucy's neck was an exquisitely crafted necklace, and she fearfully raised a hand to touch it. With a displeased expression, Evelyn spoke sternly, "You even took the gift I gave her, didn't you, Miss Lucy?" Hearing those words, Lucy was completely bewildered. "The gift I gave her? Then does that mean she didn't actually steal it?" Immediately, she blurted out, "I didn't steal it, she gave it to me," and Evelyn slowly held out two fingers. Her voice was gentle yet dripping with sarcasm. "Stealing and lying, there's nothing more to be said. Bring it to the Sandpex Hotel by noon tomorrow. Because you're Rena's family, I'll forgive you." Lucy stood frozen, biting her lip. Her face was flushed with anger and a scream echoed from her, but it was ignored. Rena spoke softly, her voice faltering. Mother, it's just that." Before she could finish, Evelyn interrupted, "I'm sorry, Rena. I should have asked sooner. You've truly had a hard time." Back at the mansion, Lucy's cursing voice echoed as the beautiful necklace was thrown at Catherine. "She's a mere viscountess and she dares to forgive me?" Catherine spoke, annoyed. "What in the world are you doing? Mother, do you have any idea what I had to hear from the viscountess because of that? Furthermore, I was humiliated in front of Duke Cromwell, and that little brat screamed so loud that everyone stared." After hearing her out, Catherine sighed, her eyes falling on the necklace as she wondered, what in the world is this thing? As if she realized something, her eyes widened in utter disbelief. Immediately, Catherine went to Lucy and shouted, "You!" Her hands trembled as she picked up the necklace. Did Rena really lend this to you?" Catherine's face went pale with fear as she hastily asked, her voice nearly a shriek, "Stop playing games and just tell me." Lucy frowned, snapping back in frustration. What is it? What in the world is that thing?" Immediately, she thrust the necklace in front of Lucy, her voice low and trembling. "You see this engraving? Felix II, and you still don't understand?" Behind the gemstone on the necklace, a small line of text was engraved, the reflected light making each stroke seem to come alive. "A gift for Lily Despencer, from Felix II, the 17th King of Benetites, the great-grandfather of the Duke of Cornwall." Lucy asked doubtfully, "So what does that have to do with Despencer?" When Catherine spoke up to explain, her voice became sharp. "That king's lover was Lily. The royal Felix's love was the commoner Lily. until their love was made public. 35 years after her death, their love story was quite famous, but there was still much doubt about her existence. To think that Lily was Lily Despencer, what an ironic truth. It makes sense. No one was ever curious about Lily's last name, because the girl in the rumors had to be a commoner for the story to be perfect. Anyway, we need to look into the Viscount. He might be a more important figure than we think. After saying that, she lowered her voice, her hand stroking her chin, the corner of her lips curling into a sinister smile. As for Evelyn, she sighed softly and spoke up. Rena, you understand what you did wrong, don't you? Hearing that, Alex spoke up to defend her. Why are you getting angry at a child? I'm not angry right now at all. Those words made Rena's eyes widen, her heart skipping a beat. Evelyn continued, her voice trembling but full of love. A shameless, thieving child treated Rena like that. My heart aches that I couldn't do anything when she had to struggle all alone and worry so much. Those words were like the morning light seeping into Rena's heart, melting the cold ice that had bound her for so long. Tears welled up, and Evelyn continued to speak with concern. Why did you have to suffer alone like that? A family is a place where you can speak up so we can figure things out together, at times like these. As soon as she finished, she gently placed a hand on her shoulder, then Evelyn opened her arms and softly called Rena's name. In that moment, Rena couldn't hold back anymore, rushing into her arms and hugging her tightly as she burst into tears. The one who was once rejected when she reached out would not have to suffer any more pain. Evelyn looked at her with gentle eyes. Her hand gently rubbed her back like a whispered comfort, because we will become a little closer now. After calming down, her voice hoarse from crying and her eyes red, she said, then I'll be heading inside. Both Alex and Evelyn also had red, swollen eyes and replied in unison, you've been through a lot, get some rest. Arriving home, she stepped outside. Rena tilted her head back slightly to take a deep breath. At that moment, right next to the door, Felix was leaning silently against the wall with a nonchalant air. His deep voice rang out, is everything settled now? Rena was startled, crying out in flustered confusion, you, when did you get here? Felix then leaned down, explaining in a low, warm voice, actually, I was worried about you, so I waited here. I'm sorry if you didn't want to see me. Hearing that, Rena smiled until her eyes crinkled and replied, is that so? Suddenly, he reached out and stroked her hair, softly calling her name, Rena. Could you spare me some time today? The sudden invitation made her face flush, and for a moment she remembered the party from earlier. The moment her heart wavered back then was truly bad for her heart. At that time, Felix had boldly declared, this is my wife. Felix's cheeks were also tinged with pink as he continued hesitantly. It's been a while since I've been to the capital. If I only worry about these things, it would be such a waste. It would be great if you just let yourself be tricked and come with me. The sky was now growing dark. The streets were still bustling with people as Rena and Felix took a leisurely stroll, popping into shops along the way. Looking at the stalls, Rena was full of excitement, her bright smile making her eyes curve into happy crescents. Felix stood beside her, his gaze never leaving her. He smiled to himself, thinking, so, this is what she looks like when she truly smiles. Suddenly realizing he'd been staring for too long, Felix gave a light cough to regain his composure, but just then Rena exclaimed cheerfully, that place looks amazing too. As she said that, Rena started to walk over. In that moment, Felix suddenly grabbed her hand, causing Rena to freeze and turn back in surprise. Felix just smiled softly and said, it seems you keep forgetting I'm here. Let's just walk while holding hands. Hearing that, Rena looked down, her heart pounding as her cheeks flushed red with embarrassment. In the end, they continued walking, hand in hand. Rena's heart was still in a flutter as she silently wondered, isn't he supposed to be mad at me? The thought flashed through her mind. But thinking back, on all the times they went out and he bought her gifts like the stuffed animals she liked, he wasn't angry at all. He was always indulging me. This is a good sign, right? A little later, Rena sat down on a roadside bench and looked up at the sky with a sigh, her face showing a hint of fatigue. Suddenly, something soft and fluffy touched her cheek. Felix smiled gently, holding a light pink cotton candy in his hand, as fluffy as a sweet cloud. His deep, warm voice spoke up, let's take a little break. I saw you seemed interested in this earlier. Rena took it, her eyes lighting up with delight. This is my first time eating this. But in that moment, a memory suddenly came flooding back. Back then, a little boy had walked by, his eyes catching sight of a white cotton candy that was as fluffy as a cloud. Immediately, a group of children excitedly gathered around her, chirping innocently, Miss Rena, have you ever had cotton candy? Is it good? What's it like? Please tell us what it tastes like. The little boy's eyes sparkled with curiosity, waiting for an answer. Her younger self had decided to describe it, it's like a cloud, and it's sweet too. As the memory faded, she smiled softly. All right, now I can finally tell them what it really tastes like. So, Rena took a bite, feeling the sweet candy melt in her mouth as her eyes widened in bright amazement. She then exclaimed, "So this is what it's like." Unable to contain her joy, Rena turned to him with a radiant smile. "Felix, let's share this." Before she could finish, Felix leaned in close and took a bite of the candy from her hand. In that instant, their eyes met. After he ate, a bit of sweet candy lingered on the corner of his mouth, so Felix gently wiped it away, saying in his deep, warm voice, "As I thought, it's too sweet for me." Seeing him do that, Rena shyly turned away and stammered, "Then, I'll just eat it myself." At that, Felix froze, not understanding at all. But then he immediately recalled a moment ago how his gaze had unintentionally lingered on her pink lips. As the realization hit, his entire face grew hot, his heart began to race, and his mind went blank. Wait, if I wasn't careful just now, that could have been a disaster. After that, Rena and Felix sat next to each other in an awkward silence, neither saying a word. A little later, once the cotton candy was gone, Rena glanced at him, her gaze hesitant yet determined as a thought formed in her mind. In an atmosphere like this, I should be able to ask him now, right? With that thought, Rena didn't hesitate and spoke up, breaking the silence. "The thing is, Felix, I wondered if he saw anything then," and Felix replied in surprise, "Me? When?" It was that time. Realizing his heart had skipped a beat, he froze and frantically tried to explain, I am sorry. I did not mean to look. But I do not know how it ended up like this." Rena was silent, her lips pursing slightly as a thought crossed her mind. This is clearly just an excuse. Right after that, Felix spoke softly, his voice both hesitant and sincere. "Actually, it was when you were sick. You were awake, weren't you? You could have slept a little longer, Rena. I saw you crying and unable to take care of yourself. Rena, please wake up. That image was burned into my mind and made me want to take care of you. That day, in your fitful sleep, you called out for your mother, begging for forgiveness. 'Mom, I am sorry. I will wake up early, so please do not scold me.' I could not bring myself to apologize for not noticing sooner because I was afraid of hurting you, the one who always pretends that everything is fine. I should have apologized, but in that situation, I just ran away like an idiot. So from now on, I will do my best. Rena, you might hate me more if I say I am doing this for you, but I am sorry for not telling you sooner." Hearing this, Rena suddenly burst out laughing, a wave of relief washing over her. If we had just been a little more honest with each other, we would not have had to worry about drifting apart. Then she spoke softly as well. Gently extending her hand, she said, "Ah, me too. I am also sorry for running away then, and thank you for being honest with me. We can forgive each other, right?" "Yes." Hearing this, Felix froze for a moment before placing his hand on top of hers. He thought to himself, "That is the exact expression that I cannot help but adore." In that very moment, their thoughts seemed to perfectly align, as if spoken in unison. "I will go with Felix. Yes, I will take Rena to the festival." Perfect. A new day began, and in one room, Jeffrey's cheerful voice rang out. He rushed over with a bright smile and threw his arms around her. "Rena, I missed you so much!" Rena smiled in return. "Me too. Hold on, step back a little so I can get a good look at you," she exclaimed. "It has only been half a month and you have already grown so much." Hearing that, Joffrey puffed out his chest with a confident smile and said, "Right? I am even taller than you now, Rena. Since I am this big now, I can be your escort to the next masquerade festival, right?" Watching him, Rena thought to herself with a warm smile, at times like this, he is really just a kid. As always, Eden appeared unexpectedly from behind. He pulled Joffrey back by his shirt and said sternly, "That is enough. Do not be so clingy, you are making Rena uncomfortable." Joffrey scowled and retorted resentfully, "There are other things that should be making people uncomfortable, unlike someone I know. What is wrong with being honest with my feelings?" And with that, his words were like an invisible arrow, striking two certain people right where it hurts. Eden froze for a moment, then snapped in a flustered whisper, "This brat! If you have time to talk nonsense, then go do your escorting." In a corner, Felix's expression darkened as he leaned his head against the wall, hiding the wave of shock that had just hit him. In the end, Joffrey walked off with Rena, a resentful scowl on his face. Felix spoke softly, "Eden, thank you for watching over her while I was gone. This time, the real challenge begins." Eden's fist tightened as he said, "If I hadn't done that, Rena would have been left behind. Besides, it looks like you had help from someone else too, didn't you?" For a moment, the image of Lloyd flashed through Felix's mind, making him feel a pang of guilt. Eden's heavy words continued, "You better remember this. If you keep this up, Rena's heart won't be yours forever. We'll see. From now on, I won't let anyone take her from me again. So you finally admit I'm your rival? You'll have to work hard for that." Eden said nothing, just looked at him. "No, because you're not the one who gets to decide that." A memory suddenly rushed back, Jeffrey's loud shout echoing, "What is this? Instead of a picnic? What am I supposed to do in a dump like this?" You're all idiots. I was looking forward to it so much. Without hesitation, he turned and ran off. Oh, Joffrey, that child is so... Please calm down, he's just very disappointed. We'll bring him back. That day, in the silence, an urgent call echoed. Joffrey! Joffrey, where are you? Suddenly, a faint sobbing sound came from a nearby bush, causing both Felix and Eden to stop immediately. Without hesitation, they rushed forward, pushing aside the thick branches, to get to where the sound was coming from. Then Felix's voice called out, Jeffrey, if you're in there, answer me. Just then, a voice as gentle as the wind said, No matter how upset you are, we're still family, you know. Yes, and that was the very first day he met Rena. Excuse me, do you know this child? In the room so quiet you could hear yourself breathe, Felix's low voice rang out, each word slow and firm. You'll have to work hard for that. Because you're not the one who gets to decide that. It was dinner time, and on the table was a perfectly grilled steak. Felix chewed slowly, lost in thought. Even though he had said it so confidently, his blue eyes unconsciously drifted towards the sight of Rena and Evelyn talking opposite him. He had to stop staring. Those words weren't just meant for Eden. Still, I've cleared up the misunderstanding, so if things just continue like this... Suddenly, Lloyd's familiar voice popped into his head, speaking like an undeniable truth. You really think so? You think there's nothing you can do just because it's in the past? You're scared she'll smile at someone else? Someone who isn't you? That fear just plays on a loop, doesn't it? The image of Lloyd in his mind was like a little devil, relentlessly mocking him. Mr. Cromwell and Eden, if it wasn't for those two, would you have even stepped up at all? You regret not making a move on Rena sooner, even though you were interested in her. At that moment, Felix gripped his knife and suddenly slammed it on the table with a loud clang. It made the food and his glass tremble. A worried voice pulled Felix from his chaotic thoughts. Felix, are you okay? I was just lost in thought. Yes. Felix immediately replied, flustered. No, it's nothing, I just saw a bug. Evelyn and Jeffrey glanced at each other, a flicker of suspicion in their eyes as if they were thinking the same thing. Is he thinking about something else? You should focus more on your meal. Yes, I'm sorry. After that, Felix rested his head on his hand, his gaze gently shifting to Rena, who was sitting across from him. Rena noticed his look, and after a moment of surprise, she mouthed, Are you okay? Felix, embarrassed, didn't reply and quickly looked away, a small sense of comfort blooming in his heart. That's right, things are better now than before. Instead of just worrying and hesitating by myself, I can make Rena stay by my side and smile like this. If I just keep trying little by little from now on, then Rena's heart. You all can take your time and chat. After the meal, Felix rested his chin on his hand with a serious expression. That's what they had said to Rena. It's a good thing Rena isn't here. Evelyn, sitting across from him, immediately asked, All right, while we're on the subject, why did you two leave Rena all alone back then? Felix quickly replied, Rena isn't a child anymore. Evelyn continued, her voice reproachful. Even if she's not a child, she never received proper care from her parents. Just when she's finally starting to open up, she has to face so much hurt in that wretched place. Yes, Felix gently countered. Mom, it was clear that Rena intended to handle this on her own. Stopping a child from doing what they want isn't the way to protect them. She needs a certain amount of confidence to escape her past, which is why I entrusted her to you, so she could gradually experience the world. Yes, but what if we just let her be on her own? Isn't that too contradictory? If it's going to be like this, then just let her go, to Green Lake. Hearing that, both Evelyn and Alex immediately shot up, angrily protesting in unison. That's impossible. The four of them will run out of money soon. Somehow those home-good people will get close to Rena again and hurt her. If that's the case, then even if she tries to run away, if this is something she has to go through anyway, it's better to face it together. But Felix remained calm, his words clear. How are you and I any different, Mom? The thing Rena needs to overcome isn't just her past, but also accepting that the home goods are no longer her family. So what about the pain she'll have to endure when she gives up? What she has protected all this time? It would be better for her to just go far away. Evelyn shot to her feet, her eyes resolute. That's why it's better for her to be with us. Your father and I will be a solid support system for her. I want to let that child, who has never had anyone to count on, know that she has us in this world. Felix's voice also rose. But that's selfish. What we're doing is just forcing her, under the guise of goodwill. If our home also becomes a suffocating place for Rena, then how are we any different from the home goods? Rena didn't decide to come here on her own in the first place. Don't forget that. The tense conversation finally died down. In Rena's quiet room, a hand touched the soundly sleeping Rena, causing her to stir awake drowsily. Evelyn's gentle voice rang out, Sweetie, time to wake up. Rena sat up, rubbing her eyes and letting out a long yawn, and replied in a sleepy voice, Mom, how long was I asleep? It's not late, is it? Just then, her hand accidentally brushed against a bouquet of flowers placed beside her. Rena quickly hugged it, a bright smile blooming on her face. Did you bring these, Mom? Evelyn said that Felix brought it for you. Just hearing his name, Rena froze, her cheeks instantly turning bright red. In an instant, she recalled what the florist had said about the bouquet of white tulips that blooms during the Festival of Atonement. Traditionally, a bouquet of tulips is given to ask for forgiveness. A warm feeling gently spread through her heart. Rena admired the bouquet in her hands, smiling and whispering, "Is this what this bouquet means?" Holding it feels like I'm hugging a cloud, just like cotton candy. At that moment, the memory of them by the fountain on the festival night suddenly flashed through her mind. It was so sweet and romantic that her face turned as red as a tomato. Seeing her reaction, Evelyn was surprised for a moment, but then she seemed to understand and smiled to herself, thinking, "It seems that boy went to the festival with Rena. Looks like they've made a little progress. How fortunate." A few seconds later, she clapped her hands and called out to Rena, "Shouldn't you open the other gift too? I prepared it just for you. A meticulously wrapped purple gift box. I hope you'll like it." Rena opened the lid, her voice faltering as she spoke. "This is," she said, lifting a corner of the pink fabric from a dress. Evelyn smiled gently. Her voice was warm as she asked, "Do you like it?" Rena couldn't hide her joy. Hugging the gift to her chest, she replied in a trembling voice, "I really, really love it." Evelyn walked over and placed a hand on Rena's hair, her eyes filled with pride. "Now then, let's get you ready to go. It is your first ball, after all." On the day of the festival, a luxurious blue carriage clattered down the road. Edam's voice rang out, "Reventia Palace." It's a magnificent and unique palace that only opens once a year for the Festival of Atonement. You're so lucky that your first ball is being held here. Please be careful as you step down. Then, Rena, wearing a pink and white dress, spoke up shyly. "Edam, is this dress okay? It's just, this is my first time, so." Edam took her hand and reassured her. "What are you talking about? It's beautiful. So beautiful that I feel honored to be the first one to see you in it." Hearing this, Rena blushed, and her heart began to race. She thought to herself, "Thank goodness, I wanted to look my best for him." A few minutes earlier, somewhere else, the sound of frantic footsteps echoed. "What are we going to do?" Lloyd asked Felix urgently. "It's already been 2 hours. When in the world is she going to get here?" Felix's face darkened as he radiated a terrifying aura and replied, "Is that what you're worried about right now?" Lloyd, on the verge of tears, was about to cry, but a teasing voice cut in. "I wonder if she'll even want to spend this boring time with you, Your Grace." Remembering that moment, Felix furiously grabbed the formal blue invitation. On it, an elegant script clearly read, "I think visiting Rena during the summer break sounds quite nice. What do you think? To explain, we need to discuss it, so please arrive a bit early." The location was a place within the Despencer estate. After reading it, Felix sighed softly. His eyes glanced over to where Rena was sleeping peacefully, and he spoke. "Did you send a letter like that just to mess with me?" Lloyd yelped, feeling utterly wronged. "This is unbelievable. It's the only way I could get a glimpse of her rare sleeping face. Are you even really trying to help?" Lloyd started to play the victim. "Don't you realize everything I'm doing is for you and your wife?" "Let's have a heart-to-heart," Felix bluntly replied. "I don't see how you're helping at all. Just stay out of it, you ungrateful brat." Just then, Lucy spoke up softly, cutting into their conversation. "Are you the Duke?" Lucy approached and bowed her head. Her lips curved into a charming smile as she continued, "I hope that the sunlight blessing the Benetites festival will also shine upon you, Your Grace." Lloyd immediately glanced over at Felix, the corner of his mouth twitching as if to say, "Watch this." Then, he quickly spoke up, extending his hand. "It's the Lady Homegood I met that time." She beamed, exclaiming shyly, "Lucy, please just call me Lucy. With your magnificent presence, Your Grace, it's not just the Revendia Palace. The Letha Palace would also suit you perfectly." Hearing that, Felix frowned, thinking with contempt. The Letha Palace? She's dreaming such a wild dream, making such a bold move to approach him. And now she even brings up the Lethe Palace, a place where only the royal family lives. I can't believe she's so foolishly greedy. Lloyd then skillfully released her hand and whispered, "Lucy, that's a nice thing to say, but from now on, you should only whisper things like that to me, okay?" Lucy blushed, quickly changing the subject. But what is everyone doing here so early in the morning?" Lloyd replied nonchalantly, his tone deliberately casual. "I'm waiting for Viscount Felix's wife." At his words, her face froze, her eyes widening in utter shock. Her mind was in turmoil. "What? He's waiting for that wench?" As if unconcerned, Lloyd and Felix resumed their conversation. "You should have sent a more direct letter. Your head is filled with nothing but useless thoughts." Annoyed thoughts echoed in her head. "This is so irritating. My whole morning has already been a mess because of the matter of having to send that thing back." Suddenly, Lloyd beamed, saying excitedly, "Oh, right. Come to think of it, Miss Lucy, you're Rena's sister, aren't you? What was she like when you were young? She must have been adorable, right?" At this, a laugh burst from her lips, making even Felix shift his annoyed gaze to her. Lucy kept on laughing. I'm sorry, that's something I could never even imagine. Then, Lucy began to mock her, her voice dripping with contempt. She was the type of person who might as well have not existed. She was always quiet, so she wasn't really much of anything. At that moment, Felix clenched his fists in irritation. Unable to restrain himself any longer, Felix's face darkened as he stared at her with cold eyes, warning her in a stern voice. His words were like sharp, cold blades. You should not act that way. Speak with respect, my lady. At that moment, Eden and Rena were just arriving at the entrance. Eden smiled to reassure her. My brother already went on ahead to wait, so you'll be able to see him in just a moment. As the words left his mouth, Eden suddenly froze, his gaze fixed on something ahead. Seeing his reaction, Rena turned in confusion, quietly asking, "What is it?" As a light breeze blew past, the scene that unfolded before them was of Felix standing opposite Lucy. Witnessing that scene, Rena's heart suddenly clenched as if it was being squeezed, her eyes wide as her mind fell into chaos. Why is Felix with Lucy? But Lucy's so different from me. She has this charm that just draws everyone to her. So that's why Felix is too. That day, Felix held my shoulders, his voice firm and resolute, as if carving itself into my heart. This is Rena Despencer. She is my wife. Duke Cromwell. Back in the present, Rena trembled as she covered her ears. She squeezed her eyes shut and silently cursed herself. You idiot, I'm not running away anymore. Then, her gaze hardened. Her eyelids fluttered slightly. The gold in her eyes began to gleam with determination, and her expression grew stern. She took a firm step forward. He already said, I'm his wife. Lucy. Lucy clenched her fists tightly. Hearing her speak with a mocking expression, she's the type who's practically invisible. She was already a woman of few words to begin with, so it's not a very good thing. The moment Lucy finished speaking, he angrily furrowed his brows and warned her, You shouldn't be like that. Speak with some decency, miss. Seeing his reaction, she broke into an uncomfortable sweat and thought to herself, What is this? Why is he acting like he knows something? The two of them were so engrossed in their conversation that they didn't notice Lloyd staring after them in a daze. He blushed with amusement, raising a hand to cover his mouth as he mumbled, This is seriously top-tier entertainment. Memories of the joyful days spent enjoying tea with Aaron and Lloyd came flooding back. Cromwell has been thoroughly enjoying himself lately, all thanks to his best friend who provides a new kind of entertainment every day. Ever since that shocking marriage announcement, he found himself remembering a younger Felix from their academy days, Lloyd mused. That Felix guy? What could he possibly know about passionate love? He glanced over, silently assessing. That reaction must mean Felix has known his wife longer than I thought. Then Lloyd stepped in between the two of them, flashing a smile as he playfully complained. Hey, you're all talking about things I know nothing about. I'm so bummed. Lloyd's next words made Lucy break out in a cold sweat. Could I perhaps hear the details? Her face darkened, her expression malicious as she calculated inwardly. No matter what the Viscount knows, it's not good to keep talking about her. She told herself, I can't let these trivial matters ruin this opportunity. Lucy's hands were now clenched so tightly they trembled, as she endlessly wondered, how can I get his attention? Lloyd glanced over, startled by something he saw. He raised an eyebrow and said, Well, look at that. The main character of our story has arrived. The sound of heels running filled the air, followed by an urgent voice calling out, Wait, Rena, wait for me. The running footsteps suddenly came to a halt. Rena was doubtful, but she stood frozen in place, wondering with a sorrowful expression. What am I supposed to say when I get there? Is that something I can just ask about right away? Eden followed behind her, worry etched clearly on her face. Rena frowned in disappointment and muttered, And here I've only just started opening up for a few days. Suddenly, a loud voice calling her name made Rena look up with a start. Miss Rena, over there? Felix stared in stunned silence before calling out softly, Rena. Lloyd, ever the cheerful one, waved them over. Over here, over here. A moment later, Rena and Eden were standing before the other three. Everyone looked bewildered and anxious, except for Lucy, who was filled with indignation. Lloyd cheerfully suggested, Well, now that all the main characters are gathered, why don't we move to a different spot first? A short while later, a hand tapped against a teacup resting on the table. Rena lowered her head, her face flushing with embarrassment, as she screamed internally, What in the world were you thinking? Rena tried to push down the overwhelming embarrassment, shutting her eyes and chugging the tea in her hand while thinking, I'm so embarrassed I could die. It's a misunderstanding. Lloyd watched Rena, looking puzzled, and mumbled with a slight smile. It seems Miss Rena is having some adorable thoughts. Lloyd suddenly started explaining, causing her to open her eyes wide in surprise. While we were waiting for you, we were talking about your childhood, Rena. Hearing that, Rena trembled and stammered, Is that right? Fear churned inside her as she told herself she didn't want to talk about it. I'm scared of how people will look at me if they find out. So Rena lowered her head, her face shadowed, not noticing the anxious gaze of Felix glued to her. His expression tightened as he heard her say with difficulty, It's nothing special. Rena's hand gently touched the teacup, and it was just so-so. A sharp voice immediately interjected. Huh? Just so-so? Lucy glanced slyly, resting her chin on her hand and asking, You must have been up to something, right? Seeing her cover her mouth to laugh, Lloyd sighed to himself. Ha, for real, it's so hard to get close to the people from the Homegood family. Lifting his teacup, he glanced at the person across from him, thinking, and at that moment, Miss Rena. Lloyd's gaze returned to the troubled and flustered Rena. Rena subtly glanced at Felix, and Lloyd remarked, She's focused on Felix. He raised a finger and suggested with a smile, Maybe she's not an extrovert. After all, some ladies prefer the study, or a quiet garden. Lloyd was still chattering on. Miss Rena must also be. Suddenly, someone slammed the table and shot to their feet. It was Felix, who walked to Rena's side and respectfully proposed, On a beautiful day like today, we should be out dancing and on a date, shouldn't we? She saw this, and turned to look at him with a shy, disbelieving expression. Before Rena could agree, he looked up at everyone, and added with a polite smile, Then we'll be taking our leave. Lloyd froze, understanding. Ah, so that's how it is. Rena and Felix turned and left, leaving Lucy behind with a face full of fuming indignation. That was so rude. Now he turned, his gaze on Rena full of affection. Lloyd watched his expression and assessed, just like her. Felix cares about her too. At that, Lucy angrily crossed her arms, her expression sharp and accusatory. Leaving so abruptly when no one else has even stood up is just so rude. Then she put on a superior air and remarked snidely, It seems both the Viscount and his lady need to get more acquainted with high society. Eden immediately interrupted. Let's see. 1 second later, he stood up and continued in a stern voice. If someone as acquainted with high society as you, shouldn't you act for the sake of your family? Eden's next question made Lucy flush red with rage. By refraining from slandering others like you just did, she gritted her teeth in frustration, and suddenly Lloyd stood up as well, and declared with a bright smile, The air in here isn't exactly great for sticking around, Lucy exclaimed in alarm. Your Grace, he pointed to his own face and tactfully reminded her, Ah, you'd look prettier if you smiled a bit more next time, my lady. Once again, she was absolutely furious upon hearing Lloyd's scathing remarks. In high society, it's better to hide your true feelings. Lucy bit down hard, thinking hatefully, This is all your fault, Rena Holmegood. As Felix led Rena by the hand, she called out softly, But Felix? Rena looked around and asked in confusion, This isn't the grand hall. Suddenly, a beautiful melody began to play, startling her and making her feel rushed. The music has started. The opening will be any minute now. We have to hurry. Just then, Rena accidentally tripped. Felix quickly caught her in his arms, crying out in concern, Be careful! Rena's face flushed completely red as she thought in embarrassment, What in the world is wrong with me today? Once she was steady on her feet again, Rena shyly avoided his gaze and explained, I'm still not quite used to these, so... Then Felix knelt down, gently taking her swollen foot and remarking, How can you possibly go anywhere in this condition? Rena thought sadly to herself, So he knew all along, but I could have endured it if we were dancing together. Rena's high heels lay discarded on the ground. Felix looked up, smiling warmly as he spoke. We can dance any time. His gaze settled on her small feet. A moment later, he swept Rena into his arms, causing her to gasp in astonishment. As for now, I want to show you something else. Unexpectedly, Felix looked at her sincerely and confessed, Rena, let's go on a date today. Hearing Felix's sincere words, Rena blushed, completely flustered. What should I do now? This feels like a dream. Suddenly he announced, Well, we're here. Hearing that, Rena glanced over, nestled completely in Felix's arms. Rena gasped in amazement at the sight of the vibrant roses before her as he gently set her down. Rena cried out with delight, Oh my goodness! Leaning down close to her, he asked softly, Is this date spot to my lady's liking? Rena placed a hand on her chest, pressing her lips together as she thought shyly, Is it because the soles of my feet are touching the ground? What is this slightly ticklish feeling? Then she glanced at him shyly. Felix smiled, meeting her gaze intently. The beautiful rose garden stretched out before them as Felix's voice rang out smoothly. This place, the rose garden, was created by Felix II for the woman he loved. Then, Felix raised his index finger knowingly. However, it was a love that transcended social status and rank. Thinking of the couple, he calmly recounted, So the woman had to make a difficult decision, for the sake of the one she loved. Felix's expression grew somber as he continued, From that day on, no one in this country ever saw that woman again. Then, Rena placed a hand on her chin, awkwardly remarking, That's not exactly a happy fairy tale ending. She then turned to Felix and asked softly, Don't tell me her name was Rose? He replied, What makes you think that? As she reached out to touch the blossoms, Rena said slowly, "There are roses everywhere you look in this place." Felix replied with a smile, "That's a shame, but her name was Lily." Rena sighed, answering with regret, "What a pity." Suddenly she was startled by a realization. Huh? Wait a minute. If her name was Lily, then that must mean... Thinking of that strange key, Rena recalled the name engraved on the blessed blue part. After that, Rena stared at him with a determined look. Felix avoided her gaze, sweating as he thought to himself, "Oh, is she going to ask me right now?" Then he turned to her with a compliment. "That's a good line of reasoning. Anyway." Rena's eyes widened in surprise as he explained, because roses were her favorite flower. A moment later, she smiled happily, her hand gently brushing against the flowers. Rena replied with a smile, "Then I understand." The image of the proud man waiting on the chair still lingered. She deduced that the garden itself was the embodiment of Felix II's longing, as someone's hair fluttered in the wind. Rena's voice continued, "By filling it with things that person likes." The man's eyes reddened as a figure appeared, and the girl spread her arms to embrace him. Rena continued to speak, so he could show her this place when she returned. And Felix's eyes widened in surprise at her next sentence. "It's just a bit of a shame, if not for the difference in status," he asked carefully. "I wonder, Rena, do you mind that kind of thing?" She sadly wondered to herself. Is he worried about the status difference between us? Thinking of the moments the two of them held each other, Rena sincerely expressed, "To be honest, I haven't really thought much about it. It's a pity those happy times couldn't last a little longer, because you both still took moments to share your hearts." Remembering the time she sat with the family, Rena recounted, "At first, when the Despencer family was kind to me, thinking of how she was once stunned by Eden's warm smiles." She continued, "I just thought it was because of the home goods name, but," and Evelyn gently took Rena's hand. She said with deep emotion, "It turns out everyone treated me with all their heart." Immediately after, Rena boldly linked her arm with his, certain that Felix felt the same. Leaning her head on his shoulder, Rena smiled happily and said, "That's how it is. I never really cared about that anyway." Then, holding the small baby in her arms, Rena affirmed, "Instead of seeing who is higher or lower, I want to focus on spending more time with the people who are important to me, just as I've always done." Felix smiled, pleased to hear her sincere answer. The next moment, she smiled brightly and asked Felix, "Isn't that how it should be?" Suddenly, he didn't reply but raised his hand to touch Rena's cheek. Then Felix unexpectedly placed a kiss on her cheek. Rena immediately became flustered and stammered, all of a sudden. Adjusting his collar, Felix gently reminded her, "That was a nice story, but we got so carried away that we almost ruined the mood of our date." To set the mood for the date, yes, the next second he bowed and offered his hand, asking, "Shall we have a dance right here, my lady?" Rena smiled cheerfully and placed her hand in his, replying, "Yes, of course." Afterwards, the two danced affectionately in the flower garden. A new day began, with a high, clear blue sky. Rena lay on the lush green grass, closing her eyes with a soft smile, and thought, "I've had such a peaceful time. I never imagined that spending a day together and sharing the same emotions." Images of her time with Eden, Felix, and everyone else playing happily replayed in slow motion in her mind. Rena exclaimed, "Could be such a delightful thing." Now, Rena sat down comfortably beside Felix. She thought to herself, "Me, this house, and the Despencer clan. No, this family. We've become so much better." Suddenly, someone came running up with hurried footsteps, calling out, Everyone!" Alex stood panting in front of Evelyn and announced, The Duke of Cromwell is coming," she asked in surprise. "All of a sudden? When exactly is he arriving?" Alex held up a card. Evelyn took it and cried out in alarm, "What? The 27th? Next week?" he added with tears in his eyes. "There's also a formal proposal from the House of Cromwell. It seems you've done a lot of good deeds lately, since all these good things are happening." Hearing this, Felix looked annoyed. He thought, not Cromwell again. With a mischievous grin, he said, "It's just me, your friend." Felix's face went grim, wondering what kind of stunt he was going to pull now. Rena beside him gave him a confused look. Poking Felix's shoulder with one finger, she covered her mouth and whispered, "Why do your mom and dad look so happy? Isn't it a good thing?" Felix leaned into her ear and whispered back, "Actually, it's a huge pain." Hearing that, she was completely baffled. Despite Felix's helpless expression, Rena just smiled to herself and thought, "Looks like he's been annoyed by this before, huh? This isn't a laughing matter. He's genuinely troubled. He's obviously here for Rena again." At that moment, someone clapped their hands and announced, "Well now, if it's already been decided, then there's no other choice." Evelyn smiled with determination, clenched her fist, and declared, "Let's prepare for the most wonderful ball." "Honey," as light streamed through the small window, a flustered servant said, "It's almost ready." A man turned to Evelyn and carefully reported, "Just as you said, the curtains have been replaced. When you're done reviewing, let me know so I can find the right flowers." Her eyes were still glued to the stack of papers in her hands. Evelyn replied, "Everything looks fine. Tell Amanda to place the order right away." A second later, she looked forward with a determined expression, thinking to herself, "This is a huge opportunity, although I know my son is doing business with the Duke, but an official visit like this is a completely different matter." Thinking of Lloyd, she considered the influence of the ducal family and how it would get people talking. Evelyn sighed. It's so difficult to make a move that could be interpreted as siding with a specific family. Luckily, this was made possible by their connection from the academy, but just one visit like this will bring immense benefits to the Viscounty. Then, Evelyn gripped the paper in her hand tightly, frowning as she schemed internally. If this party goes well, the servant beside her hastily reminded her, "My lady, that document requires your approval." Ignoring everything, her mind was buzzing with excitement. This will certainly be a good thing for that child. Meanwhile, Rena was sulking, her face buried on the table, when a maid approached and asked with concern, "What's the matter, young miss?" Then the maid quickly smiled reassuringly. "Oh my, you must be very nervous about the party, huh?" "It's all right, Lord Felix is working diligently on it." And Rena replied nonchalantly with a listless expression. Yeah, she thought to herself. That's not it at all. I feel like such an idiot." Internally, Rena was sobbing and banging her head on the table. A second later, she leaned back and sighed, speculating to herself, even if his parents don't know, Lucy will come too, because Duke Cromwell will be coming too. The maid looked on in confusion as Rena suddenly clutched her head. She muttered nonstop, "If I tell Felix right now, he'll probably just agree and accept it," but Rena frowned worriedly. Thinking of the sight of Evelyn and Alex joyfully smiling, she thought pensively, the two of them were so genuinely happy. Staring off into the distance, Rena lamented to herself, "I hate this so much," and then muttered the words aloud without thinking. "Duke, it would have been so much better if you hadn't come." Meanwhile, at the Holmes residence, a loud voice rang out, Honey, look at this!" Winter burst through the door and excitedly announced, "We don't have to worry about money anymore." Then he was stunned when he saw Catherine putting on a coat, preparing to go out. Winter asked blankly, his mouth agape, "Honey, where are you going?" With a contemptuous look, she told him, "Hurry up and wash, then get ready to go out." He replied, "Oh no, that's not important." Catherine pointed right in his face and screamed, "This is 100, no, 1,000 times more important than that piece of paper." Dumbfounded, Winter asked in disbelief, "You can't be serious? Why are you screaming?" Lucy walked up, crossed her arms, and announced, "Duke Cromwell plans to visit Rena." Hearing this, he put a hand to his chin and asked in confusion, "To Despencer? But why? We're both dukes, but it's not like we're close." Instantly, a scream that rattled Winter's eardrums rang out. "Is that what you're worried about right now?" Catherine walked up, poked him in the chest, and instructed, "When we get there, you need to flatter him a little so our new status doesn't drop." Then she crossed her arms, turned to Lucy and said, "You came at just the right time. That girl, Rena, will be useful at times like this." Hearing Catherine's forceful words, she became enraged, a murderous aura radiating from her. A duke is still a duke, but most of the nobles will be gathered there, so you should go and find a young man to marry. Lucy placed a hand on her chest and cried out, "From the very beginning, the Duke and I have." Before she could finish, Catherine cut her off, pounding her own chest and wailing, "Oh, I think I'm going to explode. Please stop with your delusional fantasies. Do you really think the Duke doesn't have other marriage prospects?" Despite being so cruelly scolded, Lucy still had a shy, delusional expression and said, "Honestly, Mother, don't you know that to this day, no one has seen the face of any so-called talented fiancé? The better our relationship becomes, the better our reputation will be." A luxurious carriage pulled up as her voice continued to ring out. "So this is our chance, during the time the Duke is staying at Despencer." Later, Lloyd sat in his carriage, holding a handkerchief and humming, confidently affirming that time was on our side. A moment later, Lloyd rushed over with a cheerful expression, opening his arms towards Felix. He held up a hand to stop him, crying out with a look of disgust, "Don't do that kind of stuff, seriously." Lloyd drooped and asked complainingly, "Is this how you treat a guest who came to enjoy the summer?" Felix nonchalantly gestured away with his hand and reminded him, "If you have any decency, take a look outside." Outside, people of high standing are cheerfully chatting. Alex and Evelyn were stressed and busy greeting them. He began to reprimand, "Everyone is about to die. Because of all the nobles from across the country that you brought here." Lloyd placed a hand on his shoulder and replied brazenly, "But if I didn't do this, I wouldn't have been able to set foot in here, right?" Watching him walk away so leisurely, Felix's face turned purple with anger, and he grumbled to himself, "Of course, Rena is exhausted because of you too." In his mind was the image of Rena saying shyly, "Because my stomach isn't feeling well." Suddenly, Lloyd turned his head, pointed, and reminded him, "I had plans for the holidays, but all I can think about is Rena, so I'll probably stay for about a month." A second later, he immediately made a finger heart, smiling as he said, "So please be good to me, friend. Felix scratched his head in annoyance, thinking to himself, this is already so annoying. Out in the bustling party, a woman holding a wine glass stood before a family portrait on the wall. Alex approached her and asked amicably, Han, are you interested in art? The woman placed a hand on her chin, looking thoughtful before replying, I heard the Viscount has a deep knowledge of art, but, as Alex pointed to the family portrait, she gave her blunt assessment, as I see it, this is just a simple portrait, nothing more. Then she turned her head and, with a smile, asked the astonished Alex behind her, are there any other paintings, perhaps? Of course, rumors can be exaggerated. Instantly, he put on a practiced smile. Clapping his hands together, he called out, another painting? Alex's next words left the woman stunned, completely frozen. Of course there is. Coincidentally, the masterpiece of the century by my daughter is in my study. Hearing this, two young ladies nearby began to whisper curiously, gossiping with each other. A daughter? Doesn't this family only have 3 sons? Just then, Aaron, walking over with Lloyd, overheard and joined the conversation. I heard at a tea party that, because the lady of the house adores her eldest son's fiancée so much, she must call her that. The rumor had already spread throughout high society, which is why everyone was so curious and came today. Looking at Alex enthusiastically inviting the woman. This way, everyone please follow me, he remarked with a sigh. He must be dying to show it off, but he's getting a bit carried away. A moment later, the room was completely empty, without a single person left. Holding his wine glass, Lloyd muttered in resignation, did it really have to come to this? What kind of painting would make everyone? Lloyd's eyes caught Aaron tiptoeing away. He called out, exasperated, you too? Aaron quickly defended himself. I can't help it, I'm curious too. As he walked off, he looked back with a laugh and explained, I'm just gonna take a peek, I'm bored. Suddenly, he bumped into someone. Catching Rena, Aaron quickly exclaimed, oh, I'm so sorry. Rena covered her face with her hands and replied, no, it's my fault for being in a hurry. Placing a hand over her heart, Rena said respectfully, my sincerest apologies for the late greeting. Welcome to the Despencer estate. Pointing a finger, Aaron cheered, ah, Lady Rena. You've arrived at the perfect time. I was just on my way to see your masterpiece. Pardon? Rena looked bewildered as he asked, could you please show me the way? Her mouth fell open as she asked again, pardon? She quickly realized, so all those people from earlier. Immediately, Rena turned and ran, calling back over her shoulder, I'm sorry, please excuse me. Aaron called after her in confusion, La Lady Rena. Hurrying down the hall, a panting Rena threw the door open. Alex began with a wide smile. Oh, Rena, we were just about to send for you. The crowd of nobles, already gathered before a large painting, turned to look at her. Alex continued, announcing, well, everyone, the artist behind this magnificent piece has arrived. Now, Rena stood frightened before the malicious stares of the crowd, clutching her dress and thinking, this can't be happening. Everyone seems to like it, but what if they find fault with it? Suddenly, a man raised his hand to his chin and began to speak, this is truly. His next words made Rena's eyes widen in utter disbelief. Alex, with a grateful expression, clasped his hands and stepped beside him, exclaiming, Count Adley. The Count turned with a smile, gesturing as he appraised the Viscount. This is a truly God-given talent. Seeing this, the surrounding crowd began to whisper, that painting is a masterpiece, isn't it? Pointing to the painting, he continued, the Viscount also mentioned earlier that this painting was done in less than 1 year. An image of Rena appeared, her face smudged with paint, holding a brush as she worked, while the voice continued steadily, the painting contains such warmth and joy as well. It's a wonderful piece that expresses the heart of the artist, who wishes for everyone who sees this painting to feel happiness. Rena blushed shyly, her eyes shining brightly. Following the general mood, the crowd showered it with praise. It's true, just looking at it makes me feel so calm. I can't believe she could paint something like this. Suddenly, a pair of hands started to clap, and a voice rang out, well. As Alex laughed excitedly, he announced, everyone, please enjoy the refreshments while you admire the art. The servants had brought out the food, and the woman from before broke into a sweat as she picked up a pastry, when Alex boasted, this too is the work of our Rena. The man was also stunned, muttering, my goodness, for a lady to... The bustling chatter made Rena lower her head in fear. This is something commoners do. Maybe they see it as a form of art, like painting. Closing her eyes tightly, Rena thought helplessly, that's right, ordinary nobles don't do these things, and I've become too familiar with everyone in the household, during my time here. Suddenly, a hand reached for the plate of pastries, and immediately after, Lloyd exclaimed while munching away on a pastry, good heavens, this is delicious. Then he looked at everyone around him and declared, it would be perfect to bring this recipe to my family's kitchen. The crowd was once again dumbfounded, after which Lloyd asked in confusion, what's with the atmosphere? Is there a problem? A moment later, he looked at the woman from before and prodded, You, over there? If you're not going to eat that, I will. She immediately looked up, then back down at the pastry in her hand. After a moment, the woman took a bite, her expression instantly turning to shock as she blushed and exclaimed, "Oh my goodness, now I understand why the Duke praised it so much." A bewildered Rena watched as Lloyd proudly proclaimed, "See, honestly you guys, what would you do without me?" At his words, the crowd immediately bombarded her with questions. "My lady, what is the recipe? I'm curious too." "I must tell our head chef!" This whole scene surprised her, and then Lloyd smiled at Rena. Having successfully mingled with everyone, she smiled and replied, Now, please calm down everyone." He let out a quiet sigh of relief. After that, Rena was surrounded by people asking questions. A while later, she walked wearily down the hall, muttering, "That was so stressful." Suddenly, Rena froze when a voice came from behind a door. Viscount, although it may be rather cruel to the artists, but inside were Alex and Adley. Hiding behind the door, Rena overheard him speak as he stood before that painting. Adley placed a hand on his shoulder and continued, "Art is just something you're born with.